Story 1. After 6 years of marriage, my wife proposed we open our marriage, so I filed for divorce and blocked her access to my $112,000 paycheck. I, 37, have been married to Sharon, 39, for 6 years and known her for 10. I serve in the Marine Corps as a logistics officer, and I am deployed for 6 to 7 months each year. My job pays well, approximately $120,000 with benefits and combat pay, which allows us to live comfortably. In 2014, we met through mutual acquaintances at a cookout. I was already in the Marines, and she was an elementary school teacher who earned around $45,000 per year. She seemed different from the other ladies I had dated. She understood the military lifestyle because her father had served for 25 years. She was self-sufficient, had her own career, and did not desire me solely for the advantages, unlike several military wives I had known. After 4 years of dating, we married in a beautiful ceremony in front of friends and family. Her father, a veteran himself, was pleased to welcome another military man into the family. The first several years were excellent. Sharon was encouraging about my job and proud of my service, and we made the most of our time together while I was home. During deployments, she kept busy teaching, going to her book club, and spending time with military wives who understood her situation. We established a routine: weekly video dates, care packages, and occasional visits while I was at port. I even bought her a 4-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood near her school, replaced her car every few years, and made sure she had all she needed. She always felt the deployments were worthwhile, and she was happy to be a military spouse. We discussed having children, but agreed to wait until I could obtain a desk job, because she didn't want to raise them alone for half the year. Life seemed wonderful until everything changed. Sharon began spending more time with a new set of yoga class acquaintances, most of whom were single women or divorced mothers from her school. She shared photos of their girls' nights out at upscale restaurants and clubs, places we used to frequent. I didn't think much of it, believing she'd be busy while I was away. She began to care more about her looks, purchasing nice clothes, having her hair done frequently, and joined a gym with a personal trainer. I assumed she was rewarding herself with the money I made. Looking back, all of these were red signs. During a normal video call date night, Sharon suddenly exclaimed, "Let's open our marriage." I thought she was kidding, but she was dead serious. When I questioned what was going on, she replied she had been thinking about it for a time and felt it was best for us. She asserted that no woman could control her cravings for 6 months and that she was tired of dealing with deployments. She had been living a single life much of the time, desiring closeness. I felt awful about how she reduced our marriage to nothing more than sex. After 10 years together, 6 of them married, she surprised me with this. I tried to remain cool and thanked her for everything she did to keep us going. I informed her that the distance was part of my profession, which we both agreed upon when we married. We discussed transferring to a desk job before, but the chances hadn't come up, and I really enjoyed what I did. Sharon was aware of this and seemed to agree with it, at least until recently. She became irritated when I attempted to have a sensible debate. I proposed we discuss it later when we were both calmer, but she insisted on settling it right now. She complained about being lonely, spending birthdays and anniversaries alone, and going to doctor's visits by herself. She began crying while discussing all of this. Look, I understand it's difficult. I miss a lot of key moments too, but what am I expected to do? This was exactly what she signed up for when she married me. When we initially married, many people advised us to have a child to keep her occupied during deployments, but Sharon was not ready to be a single parent for half the year, and I agreed it wasn't fair to dump that responsibility on her, so we decided not to have children until I got a desk job. Now I'm wondering if that decision worsened her loneliness. Still, opening the marriage? That's not right. I inquired whether she was breaking up with me. She responded, "No, I love you. I can never leave you. I want to grow old with you, but I'm about to turn 40, and in a few more years, I'll hit menopause. I have so little time to enjoy my sexuality. Half of my golden years are going just waiting for you. I don't want that. I want to live a fulfilling life and not die with regret." She had never discussed sex in such detail during our relationship. We always had a strong physical connection when I was home. Sure, we used toys and video conversations to keep close throughout deployments, but she never complained that it wasn't enough. I could see this talk wasn't going well. She wasn't asking for permission. She was telling me what she planned to do. What exactly do you want? I inquired, despite my fear of hearing the truth. She stared at me through the screen and said, I want to open this marriage and meet other men. I have needs, and they must be met. I'm doing this whether you like it or not. The lady I married, who pledged to remain faithful through everything, was sitting there telling me she was going to sleep with other males, and there was nothing I could do about it. I tried to remain calm, even though I wanted to strike something. So you want to sleep with other men while still being married to me? I said. When she nodded, I asked how this would help her loneliness. Would these random males care for her while she was sick or celebrate her birthday? She stated she wasn't sure if it would be physical or if she would date them. But whatever happened, she loved me, and only me. They'd only be fillers while I was gone. When I get home, she will be all mine, as if I'm supposed to be okay with sharing my wife for half of the year. Then I questioned how long this would last, a few years or forever. She had not made a decision. I questioned if she had already cheated on me. She snapped, if I wanted to cheat, I wouldn't be having this conversation. She thought being honest about wanting to sleep with other males was preferable to lying about it. There's some warped logic there. I inquired whether I had any say in this. She claimed her mind was made up. If she didn't do this, she would go insane. My head was throbbing. I informed her that I needed time to consider. She simply hung up without saying goodbye. What makes this situation even more messed up? I just left home 3 or 4 weeks ago after 3 months together. Throughout my absence, everything appeared to be in order. We flew to Hawaii for our second honeymoon, fixed up the house as she requested, and even discussed eventually trying for a baby next year. She was very lovey-dovey the entire time, always discussing our future together. The day I left, she was grieving and making preparations for my next leave. We had even started saving money for our future child. I was looking for opportunities at the nearby base so I could spend more time at home. That's how committed we were to starting a family. When I inquired the next day why she didn't bring it up while I was there, she stated she didn't feel the need for other males around me. That's when something clicked. She's undoubtedly met someone at her new gym or through those single buddies. The timing was quite convenient, just before I left. She highlighted a new personal trainer at her gym who was really inspiring and had been giving her extra attention. I didn't think much of it at the time, but the way she pushed for us shortly after I left made it seem planned. Part of me wanted to believe it was just about loneliness, but I'm not that gullible. My friend Mike went through something similar last year. His wife requested an open marriage during his deployment, but it turned out she was already dating someone. They're now divorced. I questioned Sharon again if this was really what she wanted, if she had considered what it would mean for us and our future plans. She replied, yes, without hesitation, as if the 3 months we spent planning our lives together mattered nothing. I decided to really push her on the details, not because I was considering it, but to understand her faulty logic. I inquired about the setting. Could I see other women? How would we handle the money? Her response demonstrated how selfish this whole situation was. She claimed she hadn't considered that far ahead. She merely wanted someone to look after her needs while I was away, but when I returned, it would be just us two. She stated I could try stuff on PO days, but I couldn't see other ladies at home because she would be there. According to her excellent idea, we'd see how it goes and possibly end the marriage once she'd finished exploring. I had had enough. Look, this isn't what I signed up for. I wanted a monogamous marriage, but since you've made up your mind, I won't stop you. Just remember, I'm not going to sit here and take it. There will be consequences. She had the audacity to ask what I was going to do about it. I quietly informed her, first, she'd have to cover her own expenses, no more money in our joint account. Second, we'd sever all communication. I didn't want calls or texts when she was occupied with her business. Third, I might start seeing other women with no restrictions from her. She laughed and said she knew I'd come along, that she was excited and that it would be enjoyable. Then she said, I know you won't go too far. How can you leave such a ravishing beauty? And began removing her clothes. I shut that down quickly. My conditions begin today. Have fun. Then I hung up. That was it. I stopped caring about her. She attempted to reach out, but I ignored everything. She began uploading obvious date night and vacation shots without revealing the guys. But come on, a hot tub selfie with rose petals, candles, and 2 wine glasses? It's not hard to figure out what's happening. Her sister texted to ask if I knew what Sharon was doing. I told her straight out, Sharon started the marriage without my permission because she is lonely between her legs. Sharon blew up my phone after that, but I didn't care. My next shore leave begins next week. I already have my brother looking for an apartment. I told him and my parents the entire story. I also hired a lawyer to begin work on my case. I'm not hurrying anything. I want to do this right and aim to make her regret her decisions. I will provide an update during my absence or when I return. If you've read this far, I appreciate it. Update 1. I need to address something quickly before getting into what happened. Everyone seems to sympathize with military women. Poor thing has to live alone even though she's married, or what about her needs, and so on. Then they stare at me as if I'm the terrible guy for not understanding her circumstances. Yes, everything people say about it being difficult is correct, but nobody compelled her to marry me. She lives in our 4-bedroom house with a pool, which she could never afford on a teacher's salary. She drives a new BMW I bought for Christmas last year, carries Louis Vuitton luggage, and wears a Cartier watch that costs more than her monthly salary. Every summer we take a vacation in Europe or the Caribbean. She has her hair done at luxury salons, attends yoga retreats, and never has to worry about bills. But it's funny how no one discusses these privileges when they're feeling sorry for her. She was living like a queen on my wages and complained about being lonely. Let me tell you something. Keeping faithful isn't easy for us either. We travel across the world, stop at various ports, and have access to almost any luxury we desire at the harbor. Beautiful women are throwing themselves at soldiers in uniform. The majority of them do not care if you're married. My friends joke that I could have a girlfriend in every country if I wanted, but I've always remained faithful since that's what marriage means to me. Some of us continue to be faithful to our wives, but no one recognizes our efforts. They just presume that all military personnel cheat. Now for what transpired during my leave. I did not return to our residence. I couldn't bear the thought of being in the same bed as her other male partners. My brother had secured me an apartment in one of the town's new luxury towers. I spent the first few days with him and his family. My sister-in-law was upset when she learned what Sharon did. They used to be good friends. I brought my niece and nephew camping for the weekend, something I've been promising them for years. The kids were asking where Aunt Sharon was, and I felt terrible having to make up explanations. Then I spent time with my parents in our hometown and caught up with old acquaintances, all of whom claimed they had never trusted Sharon. I shared everything on social media, not to be petty, but to show her that I wasn't sitting around depressed without her. My shore leave usually consists of these high-profile military parties, fancy gatherings held at 5-star hotels that Sharon always enjoyed attending. Not everyone is invited to these events. It's largely top commanders and their wives, politicians, and prominent citizens in town. These parties were significant for her social standing. She enjoyed showing off her beautiful outfits and attracting attention. I made sure to publish a lot of photos, including ones of female coworkers who were far more successful than her, doctors, lawyers, and company owners. When people inquired about Sharon, I just told them the truth. She wanted an open marriage to screw around while I was gone. Word traveled quickly in our community, and all the military ladies who used to kiss her ass began unfriending her. When she first saw my family photos online, she simply texted me asking where I was staying and why I wasn't at home. Then she switched to, "Okay, I'll give you space. I'll wait for you," as if she was doing me a favor. However, when she saw the party photos, she lost it. She began contacting me about how I abandoned her, wondering if we hadn't agreed to be normal when I got home. She started messaging me at 2 a.m. about how much she missed our life together and how all these other guys didn't matter. I did not respond to any of it. After months of silence, I eventually said, "I never agreed to this. You did what you wanted. Now I'm doing what I want." She responded with some gibberish about waiting for me to come back when I'm done, as if I were a child acting out. She truly believed she could simply stop our marriage while she had her pleasure and then resume when she was finished exploring. A few months later, she contacted me expressing a need to discuss the terms of our open marriage, as if we could sit down over coffee and arrange when she could cheat. I shut it down quickly. Do whatever you want. I'm not playing this game. My lawyer told me to make a record of all these communications since they would be useful in the divorce. Then she saw me living my best life and sent me emails saying, "Let's go back to normal. I'm done with this," as if she could simply flick a switch and everything would be fine. She wrote a lengthy email about how she made a mistake, how none of these other guys made her feel the same way I did, and how she recognized what she was missing. She stated that she would do anything to save our marriage. I simply said, "Huh," and went on with my day. My mother, who hasn't spoken to Sharon since this incident, said it best. She didn't expect you to choose your dignity over her. Sharon unexpectedly dropped by my apartment one day. I have no idea who told her where I lived. I share my address with close family and a few trusted pals. Someone must have snitched, but I don't want to know who at this time. I was getting ready to go for a workout when I heard a knock. She looked totally different from when I left. She had lost weight, colored her hair blonde, and was wearing a tight outfit she had never worn before. She stood there nervous and asked why I wasn't staying at our house. I told her straight out that I had no intention of living with someone who disrespected our marriage. She didn't like that response at all. "I thought we could figure this out," she replied, as if we were having a little argument over which color to paint the kitchen. I just looked at her and said, "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." She burst into tears and told me how everyone in our social circle was ignoring her. None of my friends' spouses spoke to her anymore. These were women who used to be her best pals. They'd go shopping together, take spa days, and organize dinner parties. They wanted nothing to do with her. All those lavish parties she enjoyed, nobody invited her anymore. It turns out that being known as the wife who started her marriage while her spouse was deployed has a negative impact on your social status. "What do you want then?" she inquired through tears. I just answered, "You'll find out soon enough." She looked concerned and added, "You met someone, right? You love her, don't you? Are you seeing her?" I couldn't help but laugh. She was the one who wanted to see other people, but suddenly she was jealous of the idea of me with someone else. She continued to beg for answers, but I had had enough. I just cried, "Get out," and she went, claiming I'd regret betraying her trust. The irony of the sentence. My lawyer had already prepared the divorce paperwork. I planned to have her served once I returned to sea, so she wouldn't come crying into my apartment again. She wanted to open things up? Fine. I was about to initiate divorce proceedings. My attorney served her on the day I left shore. She contacted me in a frenzy, shouting about how I had betrayed her and left her broken, as if she were the victim in all of this. Then she called my lawyer and said she would fight the divorce until the end and would not let me go, as if she had a choice in the matter. She also tried to play the victim role with my parents, calling them and wailing about how I had taken her by surprise and how she had no idea what was coming. That backfired very quickly. They already knew everything and told her just how they felt about her behavior. They promptly blocked her number. Then her mother called me. Sharon has been telling everyone that we had agreed to open our marriage. She had convinced her entire family that this was a mutual decision. Her mother said they felt it was strange, but assumed it was our personal choice. I shut that down quickly, no way. I already told your other daughter the truth months ago. I was never on board with this filthy idea of hers. Her mother began talking about how Sharon's mental health was deteriorating because everyone had cut her off. All those beautiful gatherings she used to like going to, nobody invites her anymore. The other officer wives refused to speak to her. Her mother truly expected me to feel horrible about this. I thought to myself, why will my friends keep inviting her when she's not even my wife anymore? "Is there any chance you could work things out?" her mother inquired. I chuckled and replied, "Not at all. I can't be the husband of a woman who has kept her legs open for tourists for the last year. Who knows what kind of dirt has gone in there?" It was harsh, but I wanted them to know how I felt about their lovely daughter's behavior. Sharon's mother indicated she wasn't ready for divorce. I was upfront with her. The longer she fights this, the worse it'll be for her. I'm moving forward with my life whether she likes it or not, so she better cooperate for her own sake. Sharon has now bombarded my phone with texts and voicemails. She begs, pleads, and promises to change, stating she will do anything to make things right. I have not blocked her yet. Perhaps this is selfish, but I want her to see exactly what she tossed away. I'll block her eventually, but for the time being, I'm letting her suffer as much as I did when she sprung her open marriage on me. Update 2. Here's the latest update. I'm enjoying a shore break again. Divorce procedures are underway, and Sharon has been fighting hard against them. Not because she wants to heal things, but because her perfect little plan is unraveling. However, she's now absolutely broke. That shiny new world of freedom she desired so much, it turns out it wasn't as glamorous as she imagined. All those guys she was going out with, they merely wanted to have fun with a married woman. They all left when the money ran out. She literally burst into tears in front of the magistrate and stated that opening the marriage was a mistake. She now wishes she could simply rewind the past year and have everything return to normal. After I denied her access to our joint account, she depleted her funds in an attempt to maintain her lifestyle. Within a year, she'd gotten through everything. Her teacher's paycheck barely covers rent now, let alone the fashionable outfits she's grown accustomed to. That's the problem about living large. Once you're acclimated to it, there's no turning back. When she first disclosed the marriage and I withdrew my money, she assumed it was only temporary. She assumed she could rely on her savings until I came to my senses and began subsidizing her lifestyle. That was her wonderful plan. Be a faithful wife during my breaks and then go crazy while I'm overseas. Her strategy failed miserably. She begs for another opportunity at each court session, saying, "Let's start over." It's easy for her to say. She wasn't the only one who had to deal with shame and trauma. Do you know what truly gets me? She purposefully dropped the open marriage notion just before my deployment began, leaving herself 6 months to do anything she wanted before I returned. Those first months at sea were terrible. You're stuck out there with nothing but the ocean around you, no distractions, just staring at the water and thinking about what's going on at home. Sometimes the dark thoughts are really unpleasant. I can't express how difficult it was to keep myself together. Anyway, the divorce is virtually complete, just one more court date. Even though she is dissatisfied, the asset distribution has been settled and is fair. I'm selling my house. I can't bear the thought of remaining in a place where she wrecked our marriage. She can't buy me out since she can't afford half the price. That's fine with me. I don't want to cling on to anything from that existence. I truly enjoy my new life. I'm doing better than ever. I've met new people, established a strong routine, and feel free to live my life the way I want. I'm not bitter about what happened. Honestly, I'm glad I didn't let her decisions ruin my future. I'm not looking to date right now, but I'm open to anything that comes along. I've blocked Sharon on all of my social media sites, but she keeps creating new profiles to stalk me. I can see them easily, but I let her know exactly what she gave up. Her Instagram used to be all about extravagant parties, exotic travels, and beach photos. Now it's only melancholy statements about regret and second chances. I suppose that's what happens when you mess up a good thing. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button and consider subscribing for more. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My wife started overspending and left the kids to go on a trip after I got promoted. Am I the for filing for divorce and blocking her cards? My wife, Meredith, and I, both 38, have been married for the past decade and together for about 13. We've had a somewhat typical relationship with no affairs or significant misunderstandings, and our families get along well together. We also have 2 amazing children, a 7-year-old girl and a 5-year-old son. We come from comparable financial backgrounds. Our parents raised us comfortably, but we weren't spoiled. I'm not sure how she got into the habit of being a spendthrift anytime she thought she could afford it, even if only a little. I believe that's been my main complaint about her during our relationship. She doesn't always realize that we shouldn't spend all of our money right away. She subscribes to the "it's just money" school of thought, which is something we've always differed on. However, it has never been a major issue for us to quarrel over, and we have nearly always ignored it. This became a big concern a year ago when I was promoted to CFO at my company, which came with a large compensation increase. Obviously, I informed Meredith of my expected salary, and I recall reminding her that just because I was getting a raise did not mean we should suddenly begin living above our means. I don't think she heard me, though, because she began splurging frequently shortly after my promotion. It began with buying sprees. She then began spending my money on nice items from well-known brands, even going so far as to redecorate our home. She got rid of all of our perfectly decent furniture so she could replace it with brand new, trendy pieces. You can imagine how much that must have cost me because she made no contribution to any of these expenses, despite the fact that she is a working woman. The main difference is that she is a high school teacher, while I work longer hours in corporate. I have to admit that my wife handles most of the domestic tasks and spends the most time with our children. That was her initial defense. She expressed her dissatisfaction with working all day and felt entitled to a reward for her efforts. She reminded me that when I had to work late at night or travel regularly for work prior to my promotion, she was the one who held down the fort at home with 2 young children. That was also a difficult chore. I understood where she was coming from, so even though I attempted to persuade her to cut back on her reckless spending, all I did was talk to her and hope she understood my worry, but she didn't, and things just got worse. She kept spending more money. I'm not a miser, but whenever I tried to talk to her about her spending habits, she treated me like one. She'd make me feel bad for attempting to stop her. We had recently fought a lot about our finances. Even though I was making decent money following my promotion, we hadn't been able to save much because of her extravagant spending. Then last week, she pushed all boundaries. When I got home from work, I discovered that the babysitter had been summoned, and instead of Meredith, she was caring for the kids. I was obviously perplexed because we generally only contact the babysitter when both of us need to go out. Meredith hadn't told me about her plans for the day, which she generally does, even if it's only to meet friends for breakfast or something else. I do the same for her. I tried calling her several times but couldn't get through. I eventually asked the babysitter to clarify what was going on, and she informed me that Meredith had reportedly hired her to remain with the kids for a week, day and night. This made me even more bewildered, as I had no understanding what was going on. I let the babysitter handle the kids while I tried to phone Meredith and her parents, but neither of them answered. I even tried contacting her pals, but they had no idea what was going on either. After nearly 3 hours of attempting, she finally answered my call. I instantly placed her on blast because her behavior was so irregular, and I felt entitled to an explanation. She explained that she couldn't react earlier since she and her parents were on a flight. They had decided to take a family trip to Miami, so none of them could return my calls. She didn't think she needed to elaborate anymore. I had to ask her why she had left me and the kids behind to travel to Miami with her parents without first addressing it with me. I already knew she planned to stay for a week because the babysitter had told me. When I began questioning her, she did not take it well. Instead, she told me that I had no business referring to her in that manner because she had done everything in her power to secure her family's happiness. She felt it was time for her to do something for her parents as well. I attempted to tell her that I didn't mind her doing things for her parents, but the fact that she didn't think it was necessary to discuss it with me first worried me. That had been the situation for the previous year. She had never contacted me before making important financial decisions. She simply cut me off harshly, saying she needed and deserved a break, and hung up. I tried contacting her several more times, but she did not answer. That was the final straw for me. I had tolerated her conduct for a long time, but I couldn't take it anymore. I immediately made a couple calls to block her credit cards. Her personal card was the only one that continued to work. After confirming the cards were blocked, I began receiving phone calls and messages from her, but I turned off all notifications. I then called a buddy who connected me with his divorce lawyer. I explained the scenario to the lawyer and requested him to begin drafting divorce papers for me right away because I'd had enough. 2 days later, Meredith returned home. When I answered the door, she instantly apologized for her actions. She claimed she had no idea how hurt I would feel. She claimed she took the next available aircraft back home as soon as she realized the enormity of her error. She claimed that she would have returned earlier, but storms had canceled all flights, forcing her and her parents to wait. Now that she was back, she stated she was willing to discuss and tell her side of the story so that we could work things out. It was too late, however. My lawyer had already delivered the divorce papers to me for signature the night before. I tossed the papers at her and told her she had to deal with them because I was done with her. While she was still reading the papers, I shut the door. A few seconds later, she began shouting at me, knocking on the door and imploring me to open it. She continued saying that I could not do this to her. It hurt a lot to see her like that, but I honestly couldn't handle it any longer. Fortunately, our children did not have to witness their mother's emotional breakdown, nor did they have to see me ignore her. I'd sent them to stay with my parents for a few days, expecting that something like this would happen. Meredith continued to knock on the door for nearly 15 minutes before giving up and leaving, likely to return to her parents. She has been attempting to chat to me for the past week. I've muted her everywhere. I haven't blocked her because we still have the kids to think about, and even if I do, I'll have to unblock her someday, so it seems pointless. Out of curiosity, I read a few of her messages. It has been a mixed bag. Most of the time, she apologizes profusely, not just for the most recent episode, but for everything that has occurred. She has promised to attempt to curb her costs and be more responsible with our finances. However, her texts occasionally take on a different tone. She accuses me of being ruthless and says I can't waste 13 years of our relationship and a decade of marriage on this. She says that if I want to work things out, I must want to do so with her. She recently wrote me a message in which she acknowledged that I was upset with her, which was understandable, but reminded me that we have 2 children together and must consider their well-being. She accused me of being overly egoistic, stating I was only concerned with myself and my wrath, not the children. She went on to say that most people try to work through such issues before filing for divorce. For some reason, her message stuck with me, most likely because she mentioned the kids. Now I'm reevaluating the entire scenario. I'm beginning to worry if I'm being too hard on her. The notion of divorce has also taken its toll on me, and I realize that I may not have been thinking about the children as much as I should have. I've been visiting them in my parents' house, trying to keep things under control, but I know they're unhappy. They will probably be even more sad without their mother in their life. Despite her flaws, Meredith is a good mother. She was not lying when she said she had always tried to make our family happy. Perhaps I am making a hasty decision by filing for divorce so quickly. Update 1. Hey, after reading the comments, I realized there are some topics I still need to talk with my wife before making such a big decision. Not just those in the comments, but also my friends and family agree that chatting with her could be good. So yesterday, I decided to contact her and offered to meet her for lunch and discuss. We opted to keep the kids out of it, despite the fact that she missed and wanted to see them. For practical reasons, I didn't think we'd be able to communicate effectively if they were present. I did, however, tell her that she was welcome to visit my parents whenever she wished. When we eventually met, it seemed weird at first. Then she went right in and started apologizing for everything. She stated her point of view and informed me that she thought I was always being frugal with money instead of simply trying to enjoy our life. She conceded, however, that she did have an issue with overspending and had been in denial about it for so long. She saw herself as the ideal wife and refused to accept that this was a problem she needed to resolve. She also said that because of my job, she often worried that I wouldn't be able to spend enough time with my family or at home. In some strange manner, she was simply trying to keep herself occupied since she was really lonely. That was something we discussed previously. As a high school teacher, her hours were relatively short, yet she spent the majority of her time at home each day. She didn't have many pals because her former friends were either busy during the week or spent weekend with their family. She expressed her desire to spend time with us because weekends were the only time I could be with the family. Because of this, she hasn't been able to form any significant connections in the 10 years after we married and had children. Whatever friendships she had before had begun to grow apart, and she now only saw those friends on occasion. She said that she thought that shopping would help her cope with her loneliness and boredom. Retail therapy was the one thing that made her happy. She became preoccupied with remodeling her home, going on shopping sprees, and making big purchases because it gave her something to focus on. For some reason, she felt like she was accomplishing something worthwhile with her time and money. The trouble was that she didn't realize she was beyond regular spending limitations, which is why we had so many conflicts. She really apologized and agreed that she should have told me about it. She found it quite difficult to admit to herself that this was a genuine problem. As she told me this, she began crying, and I realized how lonely she had gotten. It's true that after our marriage and having children, she had little time for herself. I had to admit that a big portion, if not all of this, was due to the sacrifices Mom had made for me and our family. When we had our firstborn, she spent less time with her friends and family because someone had to stay at home in the evenings to finish the task. I'd arrive home late, and it was nearly hard for me to divide the tasks or take over responsibility for our infants since I was so fatigued. When we had our second child, she went above and beyond to manage 2 children in the household so that I didn't have any problems. Of course, it was teamwork, but she was still on the team and performed admirably. As we talked, it dawned on me how much effort we had both put in over the last 10 years to secure our family's happiness. I concluded that I couldn't waste all of those years simply because I was sad. Yes, I was outraged and extremely wounded by her actions, but she saw the problem and was determined to change. I believed I owed it to her and our children to try to make our marriage work. I tried to console her while she was crying, telling her that I was willing to work on our marriage. However, I thought it would be best if we took a few days apart to cool off, and she agreed. We were both being realistic. After all, we had just had a massive dispute, likely one of the most serious in our relationship, especially because I had gone so far as to see a lawyer. That's a significant event, and I believe that taking some time apart to reflect on our behavior would be beneficial. I couldn't expect her to be away from the kids for too long, so I told her they were staying with her in-laws, and she could visit whenever she wanted. She was pleased with the choice, and the meeting ended on a positive note. We also agreed to meet again exactly a week later. In the meantime, I intended to contact my lawyer to cancel the divorce procedures. Update 2. Hello, Meredith and I met again yesterday. We have been in touch for the past week, and we both acknowledge that our marriage is far from perfect. It hasn't been ideal in a long time, and we both agreed that we needed to work on it. We chose to attend marriage counseling and committed to making it work. We agreed that it shouldn't be too difficult because we still love one another. As long as we can agree on one thing, we can overcome whatever obstacles that arise. This week apart provided me with valuable information and opportunity to ponder on my life. She wasn't wrong about anything. She was right when she stated I spent a lot of time at work, and she was also right about how much money she spent. We were both excessive in our own ways, and it had a negative impact on our marriage to the point where we're thinking about divorce. That clearly has to change. As I said in my last update, I am grateful that so many individuals supported my decision. Of course, there are still others who believe I'm doing the wrong thing and have labeled me a doormat for even considering giving our marriage another chance after what she did, but that doesn't matter because she's the mother of my children, and we've been together for a long time. One fight is insufficient to erase that. Besides, we're not only doing this for ourselves, but also for our kids. They definitely need both of us in their lives. I've already spoken extensively about my decision and discussed why I arrived at this determination. Neither of us was flawless, but now that we've identified the flaws on both sides, we're tackling them together. It is fine if this causes some people to be upset. After all, you only have the information I've provided, but I've been in this relationship for years and know this is the best way forward. I don't dismiss anyone's advice or life experiences, but a few people being dissatisfied with my decision on an online forum won't change or affect it. That is all. Having said that, I'm quite pleased with my choice. When Meredith and I met yesterday, after our 1-week vacation, we were both in a much better mood. We hugged as soon as we saw each other, and that hug gave me confidence that I was doing the right thing. It was evident that neither of us were prepared to let go. She was the first true love of my life, and I have been the same for her. We just lost touch in our relationship while struggling professions, families, and other commitments. As folks say, life got in the way. But don't worry, she's finally moved back in. She returned this morning, and I also brought our kids home from my parents' house. Now we're all living together as one happy family under the same roof, and I hope to keep it that way for the rest of our lives. I know the last 2 weeks have been extremely difficult for all of us, particularly the children. At least Meredith and I are grown-ups who can manage our emotions better than they can. As much as my children adore their grandparents, they both missed us horribly. I could see the joy on their faces when we all got back together, and I never want to put them through something like this again. Knowing that I'm doing the best thing for my family makes it easier to forgive Meredith. During our chat yesterday, Meredith and I agreed that what she had done was wrong. She explained that the only reason she went without notifying me was that she knew I would be upset. She believed that as a grown woman, she shouldn't have to beg for permission from anyone. We worked through it, realizing that it wasn't about asking for my permission, but about being honest with me and thinking about our family, which she hadn't done. She apologized again, and I assured her that I was ready to go on and start again. That's how we got back together. Even today, a few hours later, when the kids had fallen asleep, we spoke again. She apologized to me for being so insensitive, particularly during the last year. She burst into tears again, and I soothed her. We made several pledges to each other. This time, we're determined to keep our pledges and not forget about each other or our children while living our lives. That was the worst mistake we've ever made, and we're determined to avoid again. Update 3. It's been almost 6 months since my previous update. I purposefully waited until now to post anything because even after my last update, many people questioned whether this would work. Some accused me of being a doormat or a pushover because I gave my wife another chance. A few even took the time to contact me directly to express their thoughts. None of this matters now. We've been attending couples counseling for 6 months and are actively working on our issues. Guess what? It has been working in our advantage. We've never been happier together, and the kids are doing great as well. We're no longer constantly arguing or making subtle jabs at each other without recognizing it. We had no idea how much our behavior had been harming the children until we began addressing it. We've been working on it slowly as well. Instead of suppressing our frustrations and acting out like children, we began communicating directly with one another. That's made all the difference. Of course, we still need to put in effort. Sometimes it's important to keep our cool, but other times it's better to let it all out and have a genuine disagreement. But at the end of the day, we're still together and have always been able to work through our differences. That is what is actually important to us. Everyone in our lives is relieved we did not go through with a divorce, especially our parents. Initially, they weren't completely opposed to the idea, but they eventually concluded it would be too severe. Honestly, I don't think obtaining a divorce would have made either of us happy. We'd both be miserable. That being said, remaining together isn't for everyone, but it was the greatest option for us. I have maintained all of my vows to Meredith, and she has kept hers to me. I've reduced my job hours, and I'm trying to spend more time with my family. We've been going on weekend getaways, having supper together, and spending time with the kids. I'm gradually discovering how much I've been losing out on, and frankly, I don't believe the rat race is worth sacrificing family for. This change may have an impact on or possibly slow down my professional development. I am not concerned about being passed over for future promotions. I'll devote as much time to work as required, but I won't allow it consume my life. Meredith has also started to live a more fulfilling life. Instead of devoting all of her time to her family and then splurging all at once, she has begun to spend time with her friends and pursue new interests. She now prioritizes self-care, which has been a nice adjustment. She appears to be a lot happier and is no longer prone to overspending. In short, we're all happier than we were 6 months ago, or even before that. We're all really delighted we decided to keep together. Update 4. Hello, everyone. It has been almost a year since my last post, and in a few weeks, Meredith and I will be throwing a party and ceremony to reaffirm our marriage vows. The last few months have been incredible, so we decided it's the perfect moment to renew our vows. This ceremony will be far grander than our previous wedding. When we married, we were both just starting out in our careers and relied largely on our parents to finance the wedding costs. We couldn't make it too enormous, as it would have been unreasonable. This time, however, we are splurging a little, and happily we agree on it. We've earned this, but it isn't the finest part. Meredith gifted me with a set of really costly platinum cufflinks yesterday. She explained that she had meant to wait until the wedding to give me her gift, but she couldn't wait to see the expression on my face. For the fact they were extremely expensive and she makes significantly less money than I do, it wasn't about the material value of the present. It was about its sentimental significance. I knew it would have burned a hole in her purse, but she went ahead and did it. She told me she was grateful to have me in her life because she thought any other man in my position would not have taken her back after what she had done, but I did. I placed her and the family first. She wanted me to know how grateful she was for everything I did for her, and the cufflinks were her modest mark of appreciation. I'm not normally an emotional guy, but I ended up crying since our relationship has been a long road, and we finally arrived at a point when everything feels perfect. Also, I'm not complaining, but most of the time I've been the one to give such expensive gifts, not just to Meredith, but to everyone in my family. I had never been on the receiving end before, so this was a big deal for me. I told Meredith just how grateful I was for her. I also told her that at the end of the day, we're a team and our priority will always be family. I told her, and I will say it again, I am grateful to have her in my life. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife has ADHD, neglects our kids, and humiliated me on Father's Day. After much consideration, I've decided to pursue a divorce. I am 43 years old and try to do my best to provide for my wife, 38 years old, and our 2 kids, ages 3 and 5, as well as my mother-in-law. I like to think that I'm doing a decent job. Over the years, I have worked to improve our family's living situation. Not only did I complete another bachelor's degree and recently a master's in a STEM-related field, but I also worked 2 full-time jobs while finishing my second bachelor's degree and supported my wife through her schooling as well. She completed a degree that allows her to make good money till a $60,000 to $70,000 per year in a healthcare field that always has jobs available. However, with the birth of our 2 children, she has since given up on her career to be a stay-at-home mom for the time being. At first, it was a struggle while I was finishing up my master's degree. Once I completed it, after our youngest turned 3, my career took a jump and we're now able to afford our single-income household in a more feasible manner. We're far from rich, but do okay for a single-income family of 4, a little over $150,000 base plus bonuses. This past year, life has been overwhelming for my wife. So even though I now work 75% from home, I budgeted to hire a daytime nanny to help her around the house with one child while the other is now in school every day. My day starts around 5:30 to 6 a.m. I prepare the house for the day before the nanny arrives at 8 a.m. I get our oldest child up and ready for school, make breakfast, plan out my day, drop our oldest off at school, and return home in time to let the nanny in. My current task at work has me grounded for the next 2 months, meaning I am now 100% working from home. While this is nice, I am busy in meetings all day as my role involves managing teams on a global scale and overseeing industry projects. For the past month and a half, I have noticed that despite my wife claiming her life at home is stressful, her day starts at 10 a.m. After a week of working from home, I asked my mother-in-law and a nanny if this was always the case, and they both responded that it varies, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. My wife literally wakes up, cooks, and then spends time scrolling through her phone or shopping online, which brings me to my concern. I am glad I can provide her with this lifestyle since we both grew up with limited means. I understand the possibility of postpartum depression, the stress of having kids, the feeling of being unfulfilled, and the fact that I may not be the best husband, but for what it's worth, everything is taken care of, and then some. I manage the household finances since she claimed she was too busy to do so, pay all the household bills, cover my personal bills, pay her bills, track and perform all the upkeep of our house, appliances, cars, pets, etc., and I also help pay for my mother-in-law's medical bills and car note. Despite this, my life is apparently much easier compared to hers. I can't decompress with her because she always feels the need to one-up me. If I have a bad day, she insists hers was worse because I'm lucky to go away and work. If my feet hurt from walking all day during work travel, she says it's nothing compared to her standing and cooking with a child clinging to her for the past 2 years. I've been told I ruined her life and her opportunities, but when I remind her of what she says, she denies and dodges accountability. My mother-in-law has noticed a change in both me and my wife, pointing out that I have a greater attachment to my kids and that I've even hugged the dogs and talked to them more about my life than to my wife. I honestly feel like I'm in emotional survival mode. I am one step away from moving up the career ladder and one step away from finding love and comfort at the bottom of a whiskey bottle. I am sure I will be hearing from the manly men of Reddit about how I am simping, but I am not a machine. I just want to know and feel that someone I prioritize, aside from my kids, appreciates and loves me for what I do. I am sure I will hear from the stay-at-home moms of Reddit, which is fine. I grew up in a single-parent, slither household. It is not easy, and honestly, with the help of her mother and a nanny Monday to Friday for one toddler while another child is at school, can you honestly tell me she is having the typical stay-at-home mom experience? Because neither my friends nor colleagues who are single parents can say she is. I'm sure the masses of holier-than-thou Redditors will consider this a poorly written fanfic, but it is what it is. To summarize, TLDR, it feels as if my wife has checked out of our marriage. We are only roommates, where she can still reap the benefits of marriage. I'm not asking for her to throw herself at me all the time and let me do whatever I want. I really just want to be told I'm doing good and to offer me some form of emotional comfort as simple as a hug. But I guess as the man who ruined her life, I deserve it. Thank you for the replies. To add more context, never cheated. I do work in an industry that has a large female population, but I am literally an open book with work name, colleagues, and staff under me. She has access to my work agendas and correspondence if she really wanted to snoop, but on that note, she still does not know what exactly I do for a living. At this time, we as a whole family, her parents and mine, have tried to get her to go to therapy, but she refuses or skirts around the issue. Aside from my coming from a single mother household, my biological dad was present in my life. She has had both parents in a reportedly monogamous marriage for over 40 years. I have tried to talk to her about everything and my own feelings, but again, one-upmanship tends to be the trend here. What I am receiving from a marriage was asked now. Aside from my two beautiful kids, I've been asking myself that same question. We have a near non-existent sex life, mainly since last year. I always figured maybe it's part of depression or whatever she may be going through. Maybe I'm just not attractive enough or just horrible in bed because of my health conditions. I'm not some supermodel husband, but temptation and opportunity does knock, and I can perform still, but I never give in because as cliche as it sounds, I honestly do love my wife and want to only be with her. I'll give credit where credit is due, as I don't want to sound biased. When I say she wakes up and cooks, she cooks for everyone in the house. Myself, kids, and Mael, and even Nanny, as a side for breakfast, she cooks all meals and snacks. I typically fast until lunchtime, and our oldest tends to eat a small, simple breakfast in case they don't like what school serves that morning. She does load both the kids in her laundry, but seldomly folds and puts them up. I typically do my own, and the rest of my clothes I dry clean because there were clothes. She does keep track of our pantry and fridge, but after she makes the list, I'm the one who goes out and buys everything if not delivered. She does clean our bathrooms and house 50% of the time. The other 50% is done by either MIL or myself, or sometimes Nanny if she feels like being extra helpful. Prior to Nanny, my MIL was the main help for my wife up until she had unexpected medical needs. So I opted to hire a nanny to help them both more so when MIL is having treatments and recovering. Update 1. Not sure if anyone would read this, but thank you for those who have reached out and chit-chat. While I know I've kept my newfound friends here updated, I figured I'd just update my post and keep it short. I showed my wife my post the following weekend, and she read it and all the comments. Long story short, argument, she left our house to stay with her sister, and I've been a single parent since. It's sad to say, aside from the good nights to our kids, it's all pretty much the same routine. Nothing much else to say other than thank you for all the kind words of encouragement. I just need to add this post got bigger than I expected from a venting post, but I've responded to a few comments nonetheless. Thank you for the comments and DMs, and more so for the offers to let me ruin your life. It's been the highlight of my day/night as I sit here drinking with my dog while everyone else is asleep. It feels depressingly sad that I feel that I have to turn to random internet strangers for some sort of validation in my rant. My apologies in advance as I try to keep this as vague as possible. I just wanted to update those who have been kind enough to check up via DM and comments. Apologies in advance for the lengthy post. It's a bit of irony and coincidence that I made a follow-up from the update on May 6th, 2024 I made on my original post during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but I could really use another outlet outside of my therapist. My apologies if this isn't the storybook ending / destroying of a relationship people were hoping for. To save you a read, wife left, came back like nothing happened. She made it about her, nothing changed. I'm continuing to be suffering, mentally knowing nothing will change while trying to keep it together for our kids. Lots of takeout. The day after she packed up and left, my wife attempted to come back and take the kids with her to her sister's. Naturally, I was against this, and thankfully, so was her whole family, including said sister. Not only was it not fair to our kids for her to sweep them away into a home that's not theirs, but to put that financial and housing stress on the rest of her family, since she doesn't work and her sister and her family, husband and 3 kids, stays with their dad in the house they grew up in. After a little over a week of being away, I guess she cooled off, so she just decided that it would be fine if she walked in the door with her bags as if she just came back from Target. She came into my office while I was working and angrily stared at me while I sat on a conference call meeting with my team, and I couldn't just jump off as this is a busy time of the quarter for us. I guess that didn't sit well with her, because once I took off my headset and closed my laptop, she started yelling at me about how much I really don't care about her and her well-being overall. At that moment, I couldn't do anything more than look at her and just shake my head. Mother-in-law came in after hearing my wife yelling and pulled her away, telling her to not bother me, while our nanny kept our youngest away from it all on the other side of the house. That night after the kids were put to bed, I sat in my office by myself with a drink, as I've been doing for the past nights, and my wife came in. We talked, we argued, we cried, we drank, one thing led to another, and we were in bed. I wish I could say that was our making up, but the next sobering morning as we laid there, she went on about how hard it was for her the time she was gone. Literally, it was about her struggles staying at her family house in her old room with her dad and sister's family. How lucky I am to be able to stay here and do this and that and buy this or do that and not stress as much as they did. How easy mine and everyone else's in our family lives are compared to hers, even though we had similar upbringings. My mind and heart broke that morning. I've been spiraling down since then, and this last week I made another attempt to reconcile and talk things out, but I was met with a shouting match while trying to express my current stress and anxieties with life and work in general. Wife. Well, do you know how hard this is all for me? You're supposed to help me be happy. Me. So when it comes to my happiness, stress, needs, and overall well-being, FK me, get over it, right? Wife. We all have our own problems. You need to figure it out and get over them. I don't know who the woman I am at home with is, but that wasn't the woman I married and vowed to spend my life with and raise our kids together. Since that conversation, I've been noticeably distant with her. I've been sleeping in my office or on the couch or with my kids in their bed after putting either one of them to sleep. Still doesn't change her starting her day at 10 a.m. and sitting on her phone talking to her mom groups between cooking meals with the kids in both mother and in-law and nanny's care. Nothing has changed, and I doubt that anything will change, sadly. I think even if we got a divorce, nothing would change or feel different anyway, since during my wife's leaving the days seemed like any other day, except with a little more takeout than usual. My main fear there isn't that I wouldn't just lose my wife. I'd lose my kids in the process. So I guess it's sad to say the grand finale to my story, like a lot of men and some women I've talked to here, I'll just continue to smile and suffer in silence. First off, thank you for all the comments and DMs. Some context and clarification, since admittedly my post was emotionally charged since I typed it up after another argument. Post-birth, our kids' pediatrician's office gave my wife those postpartum depression screening forms, and during the time of both, she scored pretty high and was suggested to see a therapist. With our second child, she scored significantly higher, and I made an effort to get her the help she needs. She refused, so entered mother-in-law and nanny for support. I know what people will say, simp, but this is one of the reasons I'm not 100% ready to just give up and file our life together away. Also, I know silently suffering in the near and long run of our kids' future will not add to a healthy atmosphere, but neither would a bitter and hate-filled divorce. I know some have compared it to the ripping off a bandage, saying it'll hurt at first, but that pain goes away. But I'd rather try to spare my kids thinking that their parents ended up hating each other because of them or something along those lines. I've told a few PPL I talked to in DM since my last post a little more insight on my personal life. Prior to my promotion, I was a PM managing teams and budget, so out of habit, I planned for a lot of what-ifs. That being said, I made a number of contingency plans if sadly things went south. So yes, I have talked to a lawyer, 3 actually, know our rights and what each of us are entitled to, have a draft settlement created, and on hold until I feel I need to use it. I know what I want, and I'm willing to offer more than what is fair for our kids' well-being, but also have a plan if we end up going to court. It's 100% on me that I'm suffering in silence, but I'm too stubborn to just give up, so while I'm venting, I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me. I endure it to keep the norm our kids know, ensure my MIL treatments go uninterrupted, and of course, the hope my wife would finally be open to give therapy a shot and climb together to a better place. Update 2. I'm done. Wife said, I don't do, and I'm not, in front of the therapist and family Father's Day dinner. She got served. She was mad. She's trying to act perfect, and I'm just waiting while taking care of my family, kids, my mom, and MIL. Oh well, I'll just ruin everyone else's life too, and my family. Secondly, to clear some confusion, I did not get 2 bachelor's and a master's while working 2 jobs at the same time, as some readers are assuming. Bachelor's degree number 1 was completed in the early 2000s. Bachelor's degree number 2 was earned through online courses over several years, taking 2 classes per semester all, while I held down 2 full-time jobs. The first job was at a hospital with a 36 to 48 schedule, and the second job was at a big box store where I worked 32 to 40 hours spread out over 7 days a week. I worked these jobs to pay for both my tuition and my wife's, as she decided to return to school before we had children. After completing bachelor's degree number 2 and entering the industry where I currently work, I was able to transition to 1 job and pursue my master's degree. So no, I did not earn 3 degrees simultaneously or in rapid succession. I'm surprised that I have to clarify this, as working 2 jobs while attending school isn't that uncommon, or at least that's what I thought. My wife chooses not to work. She does technically have a job. She just barely works it to the point we forget she has a job, as in she worked 1 day for 5 months ago for 8 hours on a Tuesday, kind of barely works her job. And manager is really supportive, flex PRN model, and gives her a list of days they need coverage, and she can choose to pick up a shift or not. While she can work more and only does just enough to keep up her license, she complains to our family of her career being on hold for one reason or the other, although she has the opportunity to work more if she opted to. All things considered, she has an available supportive circle around her for either decision she falls on. Our family, her job, and I have made multiple offers and taken many steps to open that door for her to go back to work. That is nanny. Emile moved in to help. I work from home, her crazy flex PRN schedule, etc., etc. But here we are. I am and have been in therapy for myself already. Aside from what I deal with at home, my work can be very debilitating in regard to my mental health as well as physical at times. Since I can't find the support I need mentally and physically at home with my wife, I've opted to attend therapy rather than find comfort with someone outside of the home or at the bottom of a bottle. I've tried to express this to my wife, and as mentioned in my previous post, she has a habit of one-upping me, and here we are. My in-laws are still married. Given the circumstances in our home, my Emile moved in to help out my wife while my SGL and her family moved back into their parents' house due to their own reasons. S and her family can save money while getting back on their feet, and my wife and I benefit from Emile's help, and we can keep a closer eye on her while she undergoes bone marrow treatments. My wife, by means of questionnaires, is highly suspected to have PPD alongside with a history of symptomatic OCD, ADHD, amongst other ailments that over the years she refused to get evaluated for or refused to accept results given. I knew what I was getting into, and I loved and accepted my wife for these flaws as she did mine at the time. Spare me your gut. I don't feel sorry for you or pity. I'm like every other man who fell in love and wanted to give my person the best of me in the world I can offer. But again, here we are. There are many men who identify strongly with traditional masculinity or the red pill ideology who complain and say that I am simping over my wife. While I respect your opinions and perspectives, I will outright say that if this situation were only affecting my life, I would have left a long time ago. As one Redditor mentioned in a previous comment that stuck with me, I am the kind of person who will take a bullet for his kids. Perhaps it was meant in a different context, but I am committed to protecting my children from any physical or mental harm. I am willing to metaphorically take the bullet as needed. I believe that other fathers would similarly respond to the duty to protect their children, and that's why I endured as much as I have for the time being. I would prefer that my wife direct any problems towards me rather than our kids. Thank you all for the comments and reaching out. I've met many strangers who have become great Reddit pen pals, and some who have been in the know of every step that has been progressing to this point. I am surprised at how far this has gone from other subreddits, other platforms, and even YouTube. Love me, hate me, say it's all fake, no matter where you stand. Thank you for all the constructive comments and DMs to check in. Our kids and myself are going to be all right moving forward. Update 3, the end of an era. This will be shorter than some expected, as really there's not much to say, but just satiate the questions some of you may have had and give people the satisfaction of the I told you so moment on Reddit. After a hard push from our family via an intervention, my wife and I finally attempted to go to marriage counseling. I'm sure many of you can guess how well that went. Blame, tears, regrets, gaslighting with a sight of I'm the reason for her life being ruined and horrible again. Just this time in front of a licensed therapist instead of Reddit or mom groups. In the end, everything the therapist suggested and noted went over her head and ignored as it was against the grain of her status quo. One thing I guess worth saying was the therapist asked if she could recall when she last truly felt happy. Her response was about 12 or so years ago. Please note, 12 years ago, she was still in her 20s, childless, living with her ex, a vastly different time and position in life. I know it's petty of me, but I guess if that's when she was last happy, it wouldn't be that far of a stretch for her to find that happiness again since her ex is in the same apartment, job, and place in life that he was 12 years ago, which is fine if that's how you want to live life. I try not to judge, but in my 40s with kids, going clubbing 3 for days a week is not my jam anymore. More, and of course, I don't want my kid around a mom and company who drowns themselves in White Claws. To add, I know some will ask, I know and can confirm she hasn't physically cheated on me, but can't confirm if she did emotionally, if that's the right term. After said therapy session, I checked all her phone records and didn't see anything out of the ordinary, but I also didn't bother to check apps like IG or Snapchat. I know I'm probably boring, but shout out to all the Costco dads whose Sunday fun day includes making rounds with kids for samples. The following weekend was Father's Day, and this year is expected not that big of a celebration as it is for many dads out there. Our family got together to celebrate with a barbecue in just simple family time, and my wife treated it like any other day. Sleep in, get up, cook, phone, shop, attempt to play with kids, phone during said family barbecue. My wife said she felt ill, so she sat around most of the day while the rest of the family as a whole made the experience enjoyable. When everything was set up and the family all sat at the table, her parents and sister's family, my mother, our kids, admittingly it was a great spread, nothing extravagant, but just a great meal for everyone. I was conversing with my brother-in-law about both of our kids' school Father's Day activities, and I assume my wife overheard when I mentioned that it was a little sad to see some kids sit alone without their fathers during the breakfast with Dad I attended. She blurted out with a laugh loud enough for the whole room to hear, "It's not like you do anything anyway. I could have gone instead." At that moment, I was red and at a loss for words, sitting there processing what she said in my head while the dining room went dead silent. My MIL broke the awkwardness and in response said, "Well, maybe if you feel that way, one of you should divorce the other." My wife looked at my MIL confused that she would respond with that, and laughed mockingly in my direction, and with her hand pointing at me said, "As if another woman would want a man like him. Just look at you." While the room sat silent, I was angry, heartbroken, confused, and embarrassed all at the same time. In manly man fashion, I just nodded my head in silence, stood up, and picked up my keys and got in my truck and drove off to get a drink while trying to ignore the cries of the rest of the family and our kids telling me to stay. I don't know what was said or done while I was out of the house the rest of Sunday because I couldn't bring myself to check our house cameras, but when I returned early Monday morning, the house had a completely different feel as usual. I woke up around 6 o'clock, got the house and our oldest ready for school drop-off, checked emails, checked messages, nothing out of the ordinary. As I was getting dressed to leave, my wife laid in our bed, snoring lightly. All I could do was look at her and think of what we had and now lost. I've decided I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I texted my lawyer that morning to move forward with serving her. Fast forward to last week, she was served at our home. Reminder to people, I had no choice but to be there because I work from home. She had, I guess, what you could call a mini meltdown and came into my office screaming, "How could I do this to her?" Her mother intervened, and that was met with me supposedly turning her whole family against her, but I digress. I probably would have felt bad if it wasn't immediately followed by the rest of her week acting as if she's been this active and attentive wife and mother the past few years. Sure, people can say she's making an attempt, but she's made many attempts, and historically we fall back to where we've been. For those curious, I am aiming for full or at least majority custody of our kids. I already and will continue to cover all the expenses for our kids, insurance, tuition. Both of our kids will be attending private schools come fall, medical bills, etc. My MIL has given me the courage and strength that helps supplement my own mother's support throughout this. Basically, she is what I hope the kind of mother/wife my wife would have been to our kids and me. Out of respect for my MIL, as well as per my own mother's shared wishes, I will continue to help oversee and contribute financial help if needed during her treatments. While some may feel I should cut their whole family off, I know the hardships pushed onto a family while dealing with cancer and have dealt with it firsthand as a family member and care provider on both sides of the desk. All in all, I'm prepared to go to war if needed, but I just want a clean, no-fuss divorce. My wife has no alimony coming, so sorry for the Redditors and Mommy Gang Facebook groups saying she needs to divorce me first and get that sweet, sweet alimony money. 1. We live in a state that does not typically enforce alimony. 2. She has a means of gainful employment immediately. 3. To help curb any possible problems, I will cover her insurance and bills until either divorce is finalized or when she gains full employment. So that's that. I'm done and waiting for the steps to be taken for everything to be finalized. Sorry, it wasn't as exciting of a story with plot twists as some may have hoped for, but that's life. Not sure I'll update this once it's all finalized, which probably won't be for a few more months depending if we go to war or not. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Brother made my life hell, then got my wife pregnant. Now he wants my help after our parents disowned him and left me their $2 million inheritance. My younger brother, David, has always harbored a deep-seated resentment towards me. If you think it stemmed from jealousy, you'd be wrong. He was the favored child, not me. There was no reason for him to be envious. To give you some context, our mother always indulged David. He was the golden child of our family. She cooked his meals, did his laundry, and even asked me to help him with his schoolwork. I was expected to assist him simply because we were family, but I never received the same consideration. I accepted this, as I was quite independent. Perhaps it was partly my fault for always meeting his needs without expecting anything in return. He never helped me when I needed it and only approached me when he wanted something. While I was a quiet, introverted kid who enjoyed studying and keeping to myself, he was loud and rough just like our dad. I also tend to be straightforward and honest, never sugarcoating things. I believe my mother may have developed a negative perception of me because of my straightforwardness. This favoritism made David the family's darling, and I didn't mind it while we were growing up. However, problems began when he started bullying and mocking me for being different from him. He would tease me about my height and the fact that I wore glasses. He would sneak into my room, read my diary, and then complain to my mom about what I had written. When I yelled at him and complained to our parents about him invading my privacy, they would laugh it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. He did more awful things, like nearly breaking my glasses and putting nasty things in my food. He even once put little stones in my cereal, but luckily I found them before they could damage my teeth. When I told my mom, She dismissed it, saying, "This is how brothers bond." Whenever we fought, David would zero in on my insecurities to insult me. We went to the same school, so he knew I was being bullied by a few kids. Instead of supporting me, he sided with the bullies, calling me names like ugly loser or hairy monkey and encouraging them to physically harm me, saying I was just a big failure. Another time, during a fight over something trivial that I can't even remember, he told me to kill myself. While I could easily brush off most insults, that one really hurt because I was struggling with my mental health at the time. I'm doing better now, but it was devastating to hear that my own brother wanted me dead. Since Dad was often at work and Mom didn't seem to care much, she even scolded me once, claiming it was my fault for irritating him. Things progressively worsened during high school. There was a shocking incident when David attempted to set my hair on fire, and unbelievably, our mother defended him, claiming he was merely playing. Seriously, who behaves like that? Thankfully, my dad eventually sided with me and pointed out the gravity of the situation. He even threatened to call the police on David. This moment was a real eye-opener for my brother, as he had never faced any consequences for his actions before. He was genuinely stunned, and my dad made it clear that enough was enough and that David needed to start respecting his older brother. Later, Dad came in my room to talk. I never expected his support because he always told David how similar they were, which was true. Dad admitted that he had waited for years, hoping David would mature, but he was slowly realizing that David was becoming a big bully. Hearing this from my dad was incredibly validating, and I almost broke down in tears. I confessed everything David had done to me over the years, and even mentioned the bullying at school. My dad was shocked at how much I had endured. The next day, he spoke to the principal to ensure the bullies were warned about severe consequences if they continued. Later that evening, Dad enrolled me in MMA at our local gym, telling me I needed to man up and stand up to bullies in my life. I admit that a nerdy kid like me trying to learn to fight might have seemed laughable, but I was very focused. I managed my time well to balance my studies and daily workouts, and the MMA classes completely changed my life, even in physique. One day, David was up to his antics again. He stole my pocket money, which we received for helping with chores. I had been saving it for a while. David sneaked into my room and took it. I caught him just as he was about to cycle off with his friends. I demanded he return my money, but David mocked me, saying all I could do was run to Daddy for help. I don't know what came over me, but I punched him in the face. He was stunned, fell backward, and I retrieved my money from his pocket before throwing him back down. David started crying loudly, which was quite comical. However, my mother rushed out to help him and find out what happened. When she learned I had fought him, she was surprised and reprimanded me, saying I should be a better role model for David, who seemed to enjoy seeing me scolded. My mother also complained to my dad about my behavior, saying I needed to be controlled. My dad grimly asked both of us to explain ourselves. I told him how David had stolen the money I had worked hard for and saved, while David tried to justify it by saying he needed the money for a date and that as his brother, I should help him. However, Dad told David he was lucky I only punched him for stealing because anyone else would have called the police. He continued to tell David that he had no right to take others' things without their consent. David didn't like that and threw a tantrum, likely hoping our mother would side with him, but Dad remained firm. When David realized he wasn't going to be punished for being hit, he screamed how much he hated me and ran back to his room, locking himself in. Following that incident, David began to distance himself from me. He had finally understood that he couldn't bully me anymore and that even Dad had stopped supporting his antics. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were equals. Though he could no longer physically harm me, he resorted to verbal insults when our parents weren't around. His behavior worsened with age, becoming angrier and more short-tempered each year. When I approached him with a question, he would ignore me and walk away, muttering insults like nerd or loser under his breath. If he needed to communicate something, he would relay it through our mother instead of speaking to me directly. When I questioned her about why David couldn't just talk to me, she would urge me to be more understanding. I couldn't tell if it was just puberty or genuine hatred. Over time, dealing with his comments became unbearable, and I longed to move out and get away from him. I repeatedly asked my mother to mediate a sit-down conversation for us to resolve our issues, but she always refused, saying she didn't want to get involved. When I asked her opinion on why David treated me this way, she would brush off the question. Eventually, I left for my dream university, having earned a scholarship as a top student. My dad threw a party for me, and even my mom seemed proud. However, David remained aloof and distant, barely acknowledging my achievements. The day I left for university was a mix of excitement for the future and relief to escape the toxic home environment. The first few months at university were liberating. I made new friends, enjoyed my classes, and started to build a life separate from the oppressive atmosphere of my childhood. The constant fear of David's verbal attacks lifted, giving me a newfound sense of peace. During my second year, I met my wife, Karen, at a frat party through a friend, and we immediately clicked. Coming from a religious background, having kids outside of marriage was frowned upon. However, when we discovered she was pregnant in our final year, we decided to marry right after graduation. Our wedding was a small but joyful ceremony. Our parents were happy for us, and we enjoyed the celebration. At that moment, I believe Karen was the love of my life. I had always envisioned a monogamous relationship, one woman to come home to and share my life with. Despite other women showing interest over the years, I never pursued anything because I was genuinely content in my marriage. Karen was my dream girl, and I never wanted to hurt her. However, I later uncovered two incidents of infidelity in our marriage. One was an intermittent affair with her married coworker that spanned several years, and the other was a brief fling with an ex-boyfriend during a visit to her family. Some might think I was naive, and looking back, I can't completely disagree. Each time we separated for a while, I chose to forgive my wife. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home and believed we could overcome these obstacles. The affair with her coworker happened when we were young, and I attributed it to youthful mistakes and poor judgment. For a period, things seemed to get better, although I could never fully trust her again. I did my best to set aside my doubts, knowing that if I chose to forgive, I had to genuinely work toward a fresh start. It's been 4 years since her second betrayal, and I felt confident in my decision to give her another chance. Karen seemed to have changed, and we were genuinely happy, planning our family's future. However, 3 months ago, my world was shattered once more when she revealed that she had been having a long-term affair and suggested that our son might not be mine. Her words struck me like a ton of bricks. A mix of shock, betrayal, and disbelief overwhelmed me. I struggled to comprehend the enormity of her confession. In days, I managed to ask why she had kept such a significant secret and how she could have done something so devastating. Her reaction was cold and indifferent, as if she were detached from the pain she caused. Her vague responses left me with more questions than answers. It was a surreal and painful moment, confronting the shattered trust and uncertainty about my own family. I continued to press Karen for the truth because I felt I deserved to know the father of the child I had been raising since birth. Ultimately, she admitted it was David. My eyes widened in shock as I asked Karen what she meant. She explained that she and David had become friends when I introduced her to my family, and she stayed with us from Thanksgiving until New Year's. David, usually cold to me, was warm and polite towards her, which made me glad because I didn't want Karen to feel unwelcome. Karen wanted to be accepted into my family, so she spent significant time with my mom whenever possible. She noticed the rift between David and me and questioned me about it. I opened up about our strained relationship and explained that we might never repair it due to his unresolved feelings. Karen understood, but started including David in our outings, hoping it would help us bond. Whenever we planned to watch a movie, she invited David, and we watched whatever he chose. During this time, David and I exchanged a few words, which was an improvement compared to his usual silent treatment. I remember Karen and David hanging out and playing video games together, but I never thought much of it. Karen told me that one day, David opened up to her about his struggles in a recent breakup. Feeling vulnerable, he struck up a friendship with her. She mentioned that he would harmlessly flirt with her when I wasn't around, and eventually things escalated beyond her control. The vision of my wife and brother sleeping together made me feel sick. Karen confessed that she felt guilty afterward and left him, which matched her abrupt decision to go home instead of spending New Year's with me. Although I tried to convince her to stay, she was adamant about leaving. When we met back at college after the holidays, she was her usual cheerful self, so I didn't question anything. 2 weeks later, we found out she was pregnant. Karen admitted she didn't know if the child was mine or David's, and with no way to prove it, she chose to stay with me, knowing I was the more dependable brother. This was why we got married. My world felt like it was crashing down. The son I loved might not even be mine. I asked Karen if she had been sleeping with David recently, and she slowly nodded. She revealed that they had always stayed in touch because their chemistry was undeniable. They would sneak off to hotels, lying to me about working overtime. She admitted that half of her business trips were actually romantic getaways with him. I asked why she married me if she wanted my brother, and Karen said she didn't want to be the one to break off the marriage. She saw me as a wonderful father to our son and decided to stay. In her words, she made a mistake and didn't know when to stop. I told Karen I was glad she told me the truth, but that I was going to pack up and leave. She started crying, asking for forgiveness, and expected me to yell at her instead. I calmly packed my clothes. Karen insisted that if I loved her, I should fight for her, and that mistakes happen in every marriage. When she realized I wasn't going to do anything, she changed tactics, saying our son would be affected by a divorce and that children shouldn't be raised in broken homes. I reminded her that I might not even be the father, which made her cry more and accuse me of being cruel. It seemed like she believed nothing could make me want to leave the marriage. Perhaps it was partly my fault for letting things slide in the past. While I did love her, it felt more like it stemmed from thinking we had a son together and had been together since college. Karen kept insisting it wasn't too late to fix things, but I struggled to believe her and had no patience left. Trust was a major issue, and her words felt hollow. Even if I forgave her, I could never forget she slept with my brother. I've always believed in forgiving mistakes, because we're all flawed, but this was beyond acceptable limits. I left her crying on the doorstep and checked into a hotel. The next day, I went straight to my parents and revealed everything about my wife's affair with David, explaining how they had been secretly sleeping together for years. The shock on their faces was undeniable. True to her nature, my mother initially tried to defend David, insisting that her boy could never do such a thing to his own brother. Determined to expose the truth, I asked my parents to remain silent and let me call David in front of them. I instructed them to stay quiet so I could catch David off guard, making him believe it was a private conversation. When David answered the phone, I confronted him about the affair. At first, he vehemently denied it, refusing to accept any responsibility. However, when I told him that Karen had admitted to everything, he started blaming her, calling her characterless. He claimed it wasn't his fault if women were attracted to him, and that he was the better-looking brother. I told him firmly that I would expose him to everyone. When David mocked me, saying no one would believe me because he was the golden child, I scoffed at his arrogance and thanked him for confirming the truth, knowing our parents had heard everything. David went quiet and then spluttered, tried to explain himself and salvage his image. My mother, still in shock, demanded an explanation from David. He stuttered through a feeble attempt to justify his actions, blaming everyone else but himself and desperately trying to shift the blame onto Karen. I could see my mother, who had once been protective of her favored son, now felt a mix of disappointment and anger. In that charged moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication. For years, I had endured David's torment. Now, the truth was out, and the roles were reversed. It was David who stood exposed, his actions laid bare for everyone to see. As David's words faltered, my father, usually reserved in his expressions, couldn't contain his disappointment. He asked me to pass him the phone and began to speak to David. David, my father began, his voice laden with disappointment, what you've done isn't just a betrayal of your brother, but a betrayal of this family. You slept with your brother's wife and continued the affair even after they were married. Your actions have severe consequences and have irreversibly shattered the trust we had in you. I raised both of you to value family loyalty and decency. What you've shown today defies everything I've tried to teach you." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink into David's conscience. "Your disregard for your brother's feelings and a lack of respect for his marriage are unacceptable. You've not only hurt him, but also torn apart the bonds that hold our family together. Your mother and I are partly to blame for what you've become, but we will no longer tolerate this behavior. From today, you're cut off from the college funds I set up for you. You'll have to figure out how to pay your university fees on your own. I will also stop funding your lifestyle. Do you think it makes you more of a man to sleep with married women? Let's see how you manage without my money." Throughout this, I maintained a composed demeanor. Although I initially wanted to scream at David, watching my dad punish him was the ultimate vindication. I had exposed his true nature, and it was clear he had underestimated the consequences. My mother, despite David's persistent protests, and continued to justify him, but my father swiftly ended the call, shutting down David's attempts to explain away his actions. Afterward, my mom approached me and hugged me. It had been a long time since we shared such a moment, but in that embrace, there was an unspoken understanding and support amid the family turmoil. She apologized for not believing me all this time. My 14-year-old self could never have imagined this moment, being vindicated and embraced by my mother. Following this, my dad helped me find a good lawyer to divorce Karen. She and her lawyer tried to fight dirty, asking for alimony since I earned more than her, but her affair played heavily in my favor. We also conducted a paternity test, and it was confirmed that David was indeed the father of the child. The news was incredibly painful, even worse than discovering Karen's infidelity. I was furious that the son I had loved and raised wasn't mine. However, I decided to stay strong. Karen begged me to continue visiting my son, arguing he shouldn't be punished for the situation, but I couldn't bear to see him. He reminded me too much of David, and I hated it. After my divorce was finalized, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me as I moved into my own bachelor pad. It felt surreal to live alone since I had married so young and never really had the chance to experience independence. However, my naturally independent nature allowed me to quickly adapt to my new lifestyle, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. 2 weeks ago, my dad called to tell me he was considering changing his will because he didn't want to leave anything to David. My dad is incredibly stubborn, and once he decided to cut David out of his life, he stuck to it. David tried reaching out to our parents and even showed up at their doorstep begging for forgiveness, but they refused to let him in. Even my mother, who usually gave in to David's tantrums, seemed done with him, though it must have been hardest for her. David never texted me to apologize for what he had done, showing he didn't regret his actions. He was just upset about being cut off from our parents. Dad told me he planned to leave everything to me, ensuring David wouldn't contest it later. He would leave David only $1. My eyes widened in shock as my dad had worked hard his entire life, including his assets, retirement fund, and life insurance. The total came to nearly $2 million. The only condition in his will was that if my dad passed away before my mom, she would continue living in their house even though ownership would transfer to me. I didn't mind this as I wanted to care for my mom in her final days. Somehow, David found out about this and, unable to reach her parents, called me yesterday trying to make amends. He explained how he was struggling with college and that after Karen discovered the paternity of the child, she had been pestering him for child support. He said he had no money and was looking for part-time jobs but couldn't find anything. He begged me to talk to our family to start fresh since he really needed my help. I laughed in his face and told him I was done with him. I reminded him that he should have thought about the consequences before sleeping with my wife and getting her pregnant. David argued that I was being unfair and that Karen was also to blame, to which I agreed. I reminded him that I had divorced her, making her his responsibility now. He shouldn't be calling me to complain about her or to the child since these were the consequences of his own actions. David started to raise his voice, but I interrupted, reminding him that he was no longer the favored child in the family, but the black sheep who had slept with his own brother's wife. At that moment, David began to cry, telling me how everyone, including our grandparents and relatives, had turned against him. While this was true, it was no longer my concern. I told him we were done and that he should never call me again since I no longer considered him my brother. Since then, I've replayed the conversation in my mind. Despite my hatred for my brother, I had never heard him cry, at least not since we were kids. I won't lie, it had hurt me a bit to see him so helpless. So I guess I'm here to ask if I should talk to our parents about him, or if I would be an a-hole if I don't. Update 1. Hi everyone. Many of you have been asking why I'm no longer in contact with my son Henry, and some have even called me cruel. I need to explain that I am not comfortable raising another man's child. This isn't a stepson situation. I was led to believe Henry was my son, only to later discover he is actually my brother David's son. Naturally, this revelation hurt deeply, and I cried over it for days. The main reason I don't want any contact with Henry is that I no longer want Karen in my life. If I remain connected to her child, she will find a way to re-enter my life, and I need my space. You may think I'm cruel or selfish, but I can't see him ever again, at least not for a very long time. Update 2. Most of you correctly guessed that it was my mother who informed David about my dad changing his will, leading David to call me as a last resort to fix things. I confronted her in front of my dad, and she broke down, saying I had punished David enough and that he had learned his lesson. My dad firmly told my mother that if she believed what David did was forgivable, then he could no longer stay married to her, because he could never forgive such a betrayal. This threat silenced my mother. My dad made it clear that if she ever talked with David again, and we found out, she could pack her bags and leave. As I mentioned, my dad is very stubborn. Hopefully, my mother will learn from her mistakes. Update 3. Reddit. It's been 5 months since my last update. My relationship with my parents has improved over the past few months. My dad and I go golfing every weekend, and he treats me more like a buddy than a son. Although my mother misses David, she has stayed away from him. The last I heard about David was from my cousin, who said David had been asking everyone for money and eventually had to drop out of college because he couldn't afford the fees. He and Karen are living together, and he has a part-time job as a mechanic. Apparently, they're raising Henry together, which is a good thing, I guess. I never discuss David with my parents, and they don't bring him up either. For everyone asking, I'm doing quite well. I was promoted at my job 2 months ago, so my salary has significantly improved. I haven't been dating anyone as I feel I still need time and space to heal. I've been going to therapy, so we'll see how that works out. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Changed my wedding date because my sister had a vacation, then she got pregnant and demanded I move it again. When I refused, she said she'd move her wedding in a heartbeat, so I'm in a bit of a weird situation. My fiancé and I aren't the most traditional and wanted to have our wedding as more of a family vacation with the bonus of a wedding. My parents have a beautiful lakefront house that we decided to have our wedding at. When we were initially planning our wedding and figuring out dates, I wanted to have it on June 26th. The 26th was important to us because that's the day my fiancé and I first met. But when speaking it over to my family, my sister said no because she already had a vacation on that date. I was sad, but it wasn't the end of the world, so we decided on June 4th to June 9th. Everything was working out perfectly. I let both of our families know to put our wedding down for those dates and started wedding planning. It was all perfect until last night. I got a FaceTime from my dad who showed me the ultrasound, and I was super excited. All of the congratulations, jumping around because I'm going to be an auntie. I'm so excited for them and for my future niece or nephew. But it all came crashing down when I asked my sister when she is due, and she said, May 1st, so we're going to have to talk about your wedding. I assumed she just meant that she wasn't going to be able to be in attendance, so I told them that it's okay. We could just FaceTime them in. Her jaw dropped. Then my mom said, we could just push it back to September. I knew my emotions would get the best of me, so I said, we can talk about it later. So we went back to congratulations and thinking of baby names. After the call, I can't lie, I had a bit of breakdown. I already moved my dates once to accommodate my sister, which was all fine, and I didn't push back on it. But after 7 months of planning our wedding around this date and having my fiancé family plan around it, I don't want to change it. Unfortunately, I know my family, and they will push for me to move it and will disrespect my decision not to. I know traveling with a newborn baby is going to be hard, which is why I offered up FaceTiming her in, but it seems like that's offensive to them to not want my sister to be present at the wedding. I feel so insanely guilty about being upset over having to change my wedding dates because my sister is pregnant. She's bringing a beautiful new family member into our lives, but I'm still a bit heartbroken that if I don't change the wedding date, that I will be seen as inconsiderate and in my family. So am I the a-hole for not wanting to punch back my wedding because my sister is pregnant? Comments where Op has replied. Commenter: NTA, I'd move it back to the 26th because that's the day that matters to you and your fiancé. Now, she'll only want to go if she can bring the baby, or she'll probably try and get you to move it even further, saying so she's not traveling with a newborn. Obviously, people are going to be upset no matter what you do or don't do, but all that really matters is you and your fiancé, because the moment y'all are married, you're each other's main priorities, and no one else should matter when it comes to what you both want. Opie: I'm very scared of that since she's going to be a first-time mama. We don't know if she's going to have PPD, PPA, or if the baby is going to have colic. I'm scared that if I do push back our wedding to August or September and then she still can't make it, Estelle wants us to push it back even further. I will resent and distance myself from her. I love my sister so much, but she is definitely the type of person where it is her way or the highway. My sister is the golden child of the family. It's not really a secret or try to be hidden. She's extremely involved in the family, visits them every weekend while I live across the country, so I only visit them typically once a year, but do FaceTime them regularly. My parents are also very money-driven, and my sister is a doctor in comparison to my brother and I who do trades. She's the definition of the perfect child. She also typically plans all trips, vacations, or outings for my family, because she's extremely type A and likes to have control situations. She's a bit stubborn and likes things her way or not at all. We've always just gone with it, because it's easier. I expected my wedding to be the line, but I guess not. Commenter: NTA, remind the family that it's not just your family that's being impacted by their push to move the dates, and that those specific dates are the only ones that work for both sides. Then tell them that no, you will not move the dates to accommodate your sister again, since you already did it once. I plan on speaking to them soon about it and putting my foot down on my date. I wanted to give it some time to let emotions settle, because my parents did just find out that they're going to be grandparents for the first time and seem to want to protect and side with her. I also spoke to my brother about it, and he's on my side. I asked him to be there during the conversation to try and explain things from my point of view if my emotions do get the best of me. Moving my wedding to September is out of the question because it won't work for my fiancé's family with school schedules, and they have already been planning around the current date. Update 1. So a lot has happened in the past few days. I called my brother the day after I made my post. He understood where I was coming from and told me that I should absolutely not change my wedding date. So since I was worried about speaking to my mom and being ganged up on, we planned on when to speak to my mom about not wanting to change my fiancé and I's wedding dates, so he could be there to talk to my mom on my behalf, and my emotions got the best of me. That didn't happen. My mom called me the next day to talk it over. I informed her that I was not going to change my wedding date, and she was upset initially, but surprisingly receptive to it. I was extremely happy about that until she said, "You need to talk to your sister about this because she's not going to be happy about being forced out 1 month postpartum." I explained I wasn't expecting SL forcing her to be in attendance. Then my mom said, "No, she's coming to your wedding. I don't care if she's a new mom." After that, I got in a bit of an argument with my mom about her forcing my sister to do something that isn't the best for her and her future family, which I ended hanging up on her. I don't take being spoken to in a harsh tone easily, and will tell the other person to take a minute to reevaluate their tone and come back. During the call, she also let slip that she was also extremely disappointed in me for going to my brother for support instead of her, and said I was just creating family drama for no reason, which it is what it is. I needed a family perspective, which is why I call my brother. I ended up trying to call my sister the next day, which was declined, so I texted her and informed her that I would not be changing my wedding dates. It was a lot longer of a text, explains reasons and emotions. She replied a day later with, "You and I both know that your wedding dates aren't officially set, and the only factor would be communicating the change to fiancé's family. I hope the hassle is worth having my and your literal niece or nephew's presence." I explained that I've already ordered money down on multiple things, as well as having my fiancé's family planning SL accommodating around this date for 7 months. She was not receptive in my opinion and said, "There are really no excuses. You have the power to move the date even just a little later in the summer to include me, and you're choosing not to. That hurts." Which I ended up responding that I'm not choosing to not have her at my wedding, but understand she may not be able to come and will have to FaceTime it instead, as well as explain that I already moved my wedding date once to accommodate her. I asked her to try to put herself in my shoes and how she would have felt if I asked to push back her wedding, which she replied, "I would have moved my date in a heartbeat. That's the difference between us." At that point, I decided to offer up pushing it back to the 26th of June, as some comment said to see if she would still be going to her previously planned vacation, which thank God I did because she told me she couldn't do the 26th, that she's still going to go on her vacation 20 days after my wedding. I'm not the most knowledgeable about babies since I don't have one, and I've only known my BFF's baby, but I don't feel like there's a huge difference between traveling with a 1-month-old and a 1.5-month-old. So that solidified in my mind that she doesn't care about me / my fiancé or our feelings, but still expects everyone to accommodate to her. At this point, as per my fiancé's advice, I'm putting in the fit drawer in my head, and I'm not going to stress about it anymore because everyone knows the DAT is set. If my family would like to show up to my wedding, that would be amazing. But if not, I'm not going to be upset. At the end of the day, this will just show me who to prioritize as family in my life, because family is not always blood. Update 2. So this update is absolutely comical to me. As I said in my previous update, I stood strong and told my family I was planning on keeping my wedding dates, which didn't go well, but at least I had my parents' support on it. Everything was as calm and relaxed as it could be. My sister hasn't talked to me since the conversation, but I figured she was just pissed off at me and dealing with everything involving pregnancy. But getting to the hilarious part of this update, 2 days ago, we got a FaceTime from my fiancé's sister-in-law showing us 2 positive pregnancy tests. She's due first week of June, aka when our wedding is. My fiancé and I did all of the congratulations and excitement because once again, first grandchild and baby in the family. After the call, my fiancé and I just looked at each other and busted out laughing. Not only is my sister having the first grandbaby on my side, but his sister-in-law is having the first grandbaby on his side all within the month before / during our wedding. Like, what are the chances? My fiancé and I have always had bad luck with planning things, aka why we're planning on a relaxed, chill wedding instead of a big, extravagant wedding. We had a few minutes convo, and it ended up with us agreeing on, in my finances words, let's just elope. So that's exactly what we're doing. Like I said, we aren't traditional, and honestly, we were just doing all of this for our fam, so that they could feel included and have a fun time at the lake house. But with all the babies and 9 out of the 14 people who were invited not being able to attend, my sister and Bill her mill, and Bill my fiancé's mom, dad, and little sister, and his brother and Sil, why even have the whole wedding thing? So we're going to the courthouse on June 26th, the date that I originally wanted but wouldn't work with my sister's scheduled vacation, to go get married. We're going to keep the photographer that we have a deposit down on and just switch from wedding photos to just a couple shoot. We're also still planning on going to the lake house and just take it as a pre-honeymoon. We've already let all of our family know the whole wedding thing is canceled. My side is relieved and his side is sad because they don't have an opportunity to celebrate us as a couple. But it just wasn't what the universe wanted, and we'll plan something the next couple of years to get our families all together and celebrate maybe one of our anniversary. Honestly, I can't even be upset because it's so comical that the one major event we've been planning on doesn't work because of everyone getting pregnant and being due around or during our wedding, but at the end of the day, we're getting married and getting some adorable little nieces or nephews. This will be my last update because no more wedding means no more drama. Comments where Op has replied. Commenter, I get why his brother and Sil can't attend, but why can't the rest of your fiancé's family members attend? Anyways, congrats. I told my BF, I'm always down to open because a big wedding is more trouble than it's worth for me personally. Opie, I thought we were getting rid of the big wedding drama by just having our direct family plus 4 extras there, but it didn't work out that way, still all the drama, so eloping is definitely the right option, lol. The people that can attend would be my sister and her husband. They're having a baby in May, it's their first child, and it would be a 5-hour drive to get out to the lake house, my sister mother-in-law, and brother-in-law, my fiancé, and I got close to them at my sister's wedding trip week, long trip in Jamaica. Then my soon-to-be Bill and Sil, since they're having a baby during our used-to-be wedding dates as mom, dad, and sister, because they would definitely want to at least be close to Bill and Sil while she's having the first grandbaby. The lake house is about a 19-hour drive from where they live. Commenter: she have a gathering at the lake house when both kids turn 1 year old. Opie: that's what we're thinking. Obviously, we learn our lesson about planning stuff out in advance, but I think a combined 1 year anniversary and 2 1-year-olds birthday celebration would be adorable. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Narcissistic MIL canceled my baby shower last minute and showed up uninvited to the one my mom jumbled to throw instead, and now is crying on social media for me being a selfish daughter-in-law. I, 31F, am furious right now. A few weeks ago, my MIL, let's call her Judy, promised to host a baby shower for her family and friends. This was after my mom's invite to the baby shower my mom was planning for me went out. So she had received the invite from her, obviously. I reminded her that my mom wanted to plan one, and I agreed, thinking it would be cool to have two, and just easier because my husband and I both have huge families, and there's no way both families would be able to be in one place at the same time without renting out a hall or something, which we don't have the money for. She said that was fine and agreed with me, and said she'd be willing to host one in her place so that my mom could host one in her place. Cool, whatever. But a few months ago, my MIL and Phil bought this place that literally hadn't been updated since the 70s. I'm talking brown shag carpet, shell sinks, and green tubs, you name it. It needed a lot of work. They would occasionally ask my husband, 31M, I'll call him Mike, to help them work on the place, but this was while we were also trying to get our own house ready for this baby. It was a real pain in the ass because we had even told them that we'd be limited in how much help we can give them because to try to prep for baby and all this. My husband is a woodworker and is building the crib and change table himself. Both his MIL and Phil said that they were okay and didn't need the help and that they'd get contractors. Well, 2 weeks in, and they had already called him to help scrape the popcorn ceilings off. I'd give you've ever done that, but it's a real pain in the ass. Anyways, the date of the baby shower is approaching and the house is nowhere near done. We keep asking if we should let people know that her shower is canceled, or if we should change the location or change the date. She said it's okay, it'll be done, and promised us. Well, literally the week of the shower, they're over for dinner, and she drops the bomb and tells us that she thinks she bit off more than she could chew and asked if we'd be okay hosting the shower here. I look at my husband, and he almost spits his food out. I'm waiting for him to say something. My MIL starts half-ass apologizing and said she'd bring over everything. The food, extra tables, she just needs the space. Well, we live in a 1,100-foot condo, and she wants about 30 people here. She must have seen the look on my face and goes, if we would have had the help, it might have been done for the shower. She accused me of not being excited about the house or appreciating it when she mentioned it at dinner before. She never showed any signs of underappreciation. She always told me to rest and that she didn't need my help because of my condition. And then I said that Mike has been busy here trying to get our own house ready for the baby. There's a lot around here that needed to get done that we've been putting off, and we don't want to have to be doing things while the baby is here. Well, they go home that night, and my husband receives a text that says they are too burnt out from Reno to be hosting a baby shower and that they're going to be reaching out to people to tell them that it's canceled. She even said that I wasn't being grateful and didn't seem excited that she was doing all of this for me and felt a little bit used. Used? She's the one that wanted to do a baby shower for me, even though my mom had already invited her to hers. Why is she doing this? I am beyond pissed off with her, and on top of everything else, I'm about to give birth to her first and only grandchild in less than 2 months. This isn't the first time she's been like this with me. She never really liked me dating Mike. In the past, we've been together for 15 years. We started dating in senior year. She would literally ignore me when I would come over to their place after school. She'd tell Mike to date other people right in front of me. She'd even go so far as getting numbers from other girls or bringing girls to hockey games that Mike used to play. So after a hockey game, these girls she'd bring would be thinking that Mike was interested, and then I'd be standing there waiting for him to get out of the dressing room. Mike used to be in a junior team that would go away and live with a billet family for the winter seasons, and then he'd come back in the summer. He wouldn't be paid for this, But it was sort of like playing hockey to like either get a scholarship or drafted to a farm team or the NHL. It was basically an unpaid career. Anyways, since then, I've distanced myself from her and my Phil. Not that he really did anything wrong, but I feel like maybe by allowing her to do that, it sort of was kind of doing something wrong. I don't want to go over to their house anymore. I don't care that there's no baby shower for her, but I am sort of sad that Mike's aunts and sisters and a few family friends on his side think that it's canceled and are bummed about it. I want to invite them to my mom's. I've already talked to my mom about it, and she's cool with that. But like, should I invite them and then not invite my MIL? Would that look bad? What do I do? Update 1. I couldn't help but stew in my anger and frustration, even though I really try to get over it. The audacity of my MIL's behavior was astonishing. She had a knack for making everything about herself. And yeah, maybe I was still feeling petty about things that had happened in the past, but like for real, after going over it with Mike and my mom, we decided that it would be best to extend the invitation to some of Mike's relatives while excluding my MIL. It wasn't an act of revenge or malice. It was just a way for us to salvage the celebration that my MIL had single-handedly ruined because of her own pride. My mom sympathized with the situation, understanding that sometimes family dynamics can be challenging. I reached out to Mike's aunts and sisters individually, explaining the situation and extending an invitation to join us at my mom's baby shower in a few weeks' time. I try to emphasize how much it would mean to have them there to celebrate this special moment in our lives. His aunts and sisters understood. They knew how Judy can be. Honestly, I don't even think they have that great of a relationship. His one aunt is constantly bitching to us about Judy and how much she uses her for rides around the city or babysitting their dog. I knew that they wouldn't want to miss out on something like this just because Judy can't get her together. As the days went on and the weekend came and went, we got heartfelt responses from Mike's aunts and sisters. They told us how disappointed they were in Judy and assured us that they would be more than happy to attend my mom's baby shower. They asked if we didn't want them to tell Judy, but we said it was to their own discretion. We honestly didn't care. It wasn't my party, it was my mom's, and my mom said if Judy thinks she's a jerk for not inviting her MIL, then so be it. My mom gets it. Meanwhile, my MIL remained distant and it was total radio silence. She avoided any direct confrontation with me or Mike. It was clear that she was not pleased with our decision to exclude her from the baby shower. However, I didn't let her manipulative tactics affect my happiness during this joyful time. This was supposed to be one of the best times in our lives. She wasn't going to bring this down. Throughout the day, I couldn't help but notice how supportive and genuinely happy everyone was for us. It honestly felt totally different to the energy that Judy was giving towards us. My mom had done an incredible job organizing the event, and it was a true celebration of love and anticipation for our growing family. There were games, laughter, and heartfelt conversations that made me feel so grateful to have these people in my life. But nothing could prepare me for what happened next. That literally walks in the front door with gifts in her hands and a big fake smile stretched across her face as if nothing had happened. I was right in the middle of opening gifts. I was on fire. The absolute audacity of this woman was beyond comprehension, and her blatant disregard for my feelings. Judy sauntered into the room like her shit didn't stink, and she was wearing this white dress. I was wearing a white dress. Well, I couldn't let you have all the fun now, could I? She said with this smug look, and I could have just screamed. Mike's aunts and sisters literally fell silent and looked shocked as hell, but nobody else knew that Judy wasn't going to be there on purpose. Nobody really asked about her at all, really. I gritted my teeth the whole time I was opening up the presents. My heart fell into my butt. I did feel bad, but like, how dare she show her face here after everything she'd done? My face was probably beet red with embarrassment and anger. I forced a smile and couldn't say anything. My mom came to greet her and said, "By all means, Judy, please make yourself at home," but it was more like a sarcastic tone. Judy's laughter grated on my nerves, and she went to grab a mimosa and settled into the seat beside me, urging me to open her gifts next. I wanted to honestly get up and cry and call Mike. I felt like I was 19 again, and Judy was trying to hurt me and pretend I didn't exist. This wasn't about me. She needed to make it all about her, and I knew that that's why she wanted to have a baby shower. The shower wouldn't be for me. It would be for her to show off the fact that she was going to be a grandma and that she was going to have a grandbaby. My mom knew that I was getting upset and suggested we get up and start a game. I ended up going to the bathroom and calling Mike and crying. Mike told me he was going to come and drag his mom out of there, but I told him that it was okay and just to leave it. We can deal with it later. I mean, we didn't invite her after all. This was my karma, I guess. And so, I stood back up and wiped my face and went back and pretended I wasn't bothered. Bless my mom for taking care of all of this. She was an absolute champ at diverting and diffusing the situation. The day wore on and the festivities continued. I didn't want to be upset, but like her, she was interacting with everyone as if all was good, and at one point my cousin said they didn't think she was coming, and Judy straight up told her that I didn't want her there. My cousin laughed it off as if it was a joke. I felt so embarrassed. After the party, a few of my friends stayed behind and asked about why she had come so late, and I had to tell them that I didn't invite her. They all understood because they know all about her and how she's treated me. Update 2. The next day, Judy calls us, and she tries to rip me and Mike a new one. He turns it back on her and is like, "How dare you?" and all this stuff. He's basically yelling at her and was telling her how she was wrong for crashing my mom's baby shower uninvited. He said she wasn't invited because of how she was treating them, Becca, me specifically, and making the shower all about her. He said that Becca, me, just wanted a day to celebrate her and the baby. Mike made it clear that her behavior was unacceptable and hurtful, and that we wanted a break from her. He also apologized to her and said that we probably should have told her, but that she canceled it, and my mom thought it would be a nice gesture to still allow people to celebrate Becca me. Judy tried to defend herself, claiming that she had a right to be there as the grandmother to be, but Mike wasn't having any of it. "You had your chance, Mom, but you chose to make this all about yourself. We asked you multiple times if we should reschedule or find some other way to have one. You've disrespected us and our wishes. We're tired of your selfishness and manipulation. It's time for you to realize that your actions have consequences." I could hear Judy on the other end, and she was totally taken aback by Mike's stern tone. He was very much giving her the what for. I've heard him talk to her like this before, but like also not to this extent. This was serious. She started crying, blah, 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 crocodile tears, but for once he didn't back down or try to pacify her. He stood his ground, asserting himself, and really refused to tolerate any more of her toxic behavior. He told her we're not going to be talking to them for a while, and then his father got on the phone, and I could hear him getting back at Mike for making his mother cry. Whatever. I'm so over it all. I really don't need this in my life. But like, are we wrong? Am I the jerk here? Update 3. Well, get this. I told you that Judy called us this morning, and we sort of laid into her. She put me on blast all over Facebook tonight and said that I didn't want her to be a part of the baby shower and that I forced her to cancel the shower that she had planned because her house wasn't good enough for my standards. And she's calling me a spoiled brat who doesn't know what it means to be family. She said that I called her a slew of names after the baby shower. She also blocked me on Facebook, so I couldn't even see this, but Mike could. People in the comments were giving her pity and calling me a bitch and a selfish cow and saying that she didn't raise Mike this way. She even said that I was going to keep her baby away from her. What? I honestly can't even believe this, and I can't even believe I'm typing this out right now. Mike called his dad and told him what happened, and his dad took her side. He said that there was no reason to have 2 showers, and if I felt that way about Judy, then I'm not welcome in their lives. Has the whole world gone mad? She keeps posting pictures of Mike as a baby and responding to people's comments and saying that she was so excited to have a baby in the family again. But she said this is going to give her a heart attack. And now she's on Facebook posting how she's having heart palpitations and doesn't know if she's going to make it through the night. Am I in the twilight zone? What is actually happening right now? Update 4. Hi all, just here to say that we had a beautiful baby girl, and I can't even believe it. Everything is so magical. I'm a mommy. Before she was born, we went complete NC with both Mike's mom and dad. We were both just so done with the craziness and really didn't want to bring her into this world with all of that. There was a super intense moment a few days after we brought her home when Judy tried to come by with some pre-made meals. But we have the Ring doorbell. So with this doorbell, you can see who is at the door because there's a camera there and basically talk to the person through a microphone if you don't want to answer the door. So Mike sees that it's Judy. She's standing there with what looks like meals in tinfoil. I look at Mike, and I'm like, hell no, that could be poisoned. I wouldn't doubt it at this point. And he goes on the intercom and says that she needs to leave because we aren't answering the door and she's not welcome here. Her fake little smile instantly faded, and she starts spitting back, saying that we can't keep her away from her baby, and the baby needs her in her life, and we're only jeopardizing the baby's growth by keeping her away from her grandma. Just psycho words. Mike says if she doesn't leave, that he'll call the cops. She then throws the food at the door and rips off our Ring camera. Mike calls his dad and tells him what happens, and basically we are still in C after that. But all that's to say that we have our beautiful girl here now, and honestly, Judy. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Stepdad moved his entitled daughter into my new house, changed locks. When I called cops, despite mom's trauma, she disowned me for her new family. Hi guys, so I, 32F, recently bought a house of my own. I invited all my family and friends over for a housewarming party a couple of days ago. I invited my parents as well, but I made sure to mention that only they were invited so my mother wouldn't bring her new family along. My parents have been separated for almost 15 years. Almost 2 years ago, my mother remarried to Carson. He has a 22-year-old daughter, Vanessa, from a previous marriage. Vanessa is spoiled, entitled, and everything that I hate. Carson isn't exactly a party to be around either, and it's pretty clear to me that they don't like me. So, I obviously didn't want them to attend my housewarming party because it was an important event for me. In spite of that, my mother brought them along, and when I brought it up with her, she told me that she wanted me to bond with her new family, and it would mean the world to her if we could all just get along. I didn't say much to her on that day because I didn't want to kick up a fuss on the day of my own party and just let it slide, thinking that I would deal with this later. But then Vanessa started talking smack about my house at the party to all my friends and told me that she could afford a better house on her salary, which was almost half of mine. That annoyed me, and I told her that she was welcome to buy a house of her own because I was sure that her parents would appreciate their 22-year-old daughter finally moving out of the basement. That earned me a lot of laughs, and she went completely red in the face, so I knew that she was pretty embarrassed, but she was the one who had started it, so I didn't really feel too bad about what I said. I had a lot of guests to attend to, so I didn't pay her much mind and went along to talk to other people. After the party ended, my mother lingered, even after everybody had left, including Carson and Vanessa. I decided to confront her at that point and told her that I really didn't want her new family around. I was in my 30s, and I was old enough to know the kind of people that I wanted around me and the kind of people that I didn't. Her husband and stepdaughter unfortunately happened to fall under the latter category because they were really unpleasant and disrespectful to me. She told me to just give them a chance, and then said that she wanted Vanessa to move in with me for a while because her new workplace was a lot closer to my place than to theirs. She told me that if I spent some quality time with her, then I would come to like her, but I shot that idea down almost instantly because I could hardly even tolerate her for one evening. I couldn't even imagine the mental strength that it would take for me to tolerate her for an entire day, or even more. She was bratty and had no manners at all, so I obviously didn't want her around, and especially not in my home, which was supposed to be my safe space. My mother tried to fight her way into letting Vanessa stay with me, but I wasn't ready to budge and told her that it was never going to happen, so she could save her breath. So she left in a huff, and I didn't even bother to talk to her afterwards because there was just no way that I was giving in to her ridiculous demands. But then yesterday, something even more crazy happened. I received a notification from the alarm company, which said that my house had been broken into, and I immediately rushed back home from work only to find that the locks had been changed and I couldn't even get in. I could hear people on the inside and was about to call the cops when my stepfather Carson opened the door and told me that I needed to stay out because it was my punishment. Apparently, I was lost, and I asked him what exactly was I being punished for. So he told me that he wasn't going to refresh my memory for me, and I had to think of it myself. He'd had the audacity to give me a hint and reminded me of the instance that I had disrespected Vanessa in my own home at the party the other day. And now he said that they were taking over my house because I'd already had the chance to agree to do it nicely, but I had refused and sent my mother home crying and all upset because of the way I behaved with her. Carson told me that he decided that I needed to be taken down a peg or two, and he was going to make sure that it happened. I laughed in his face and told him that I was going to call the police and make sure that he was thrown out along with his daughter, because they had absolutely no business taking over my house, as if it was some stupid game. Things got even more frustrating, and he told me that he knew I wasn't going to do anything of the sort, because then my mother would be really upset with me and would never speak to me again, because I knew the kind of experience she'd had with cops, and she didn't really like them. My mother had a really bad history with police, and she even hated the thought of having them, even if there was a crime that was being committed, so she really would never forgive me if I involved the cops in this, and I was acutely aware of it. He even said to me that Vanessa apparently deserved to live in this house more than I did, then left me on the porch and slammed the door shut in my face. I realized then that there was really nothing I could do except to call the police and hope for the best, because clearly Carson and Vanessa weren't going to leave on their own. So I called the police, and within an hour I was having them evicted from the premises, which was lucky because Vanessa had actually started unpacking her stuff. Carson could barely get over the shock of what had happened because he hadn't been counting on me to call the police like this because of my mother's past experiences with the cops. I knew that my mom wasn't going to be happy about this, but I still did it. I knew she had trauma related to the police, but my hands were tied here. I really couldn't do anything apart from get the cops involved. I received a call from her about an hour ago, and she wasn't even mad at me, which I guess was more disappointing than if she actually had been pissed off. She sounded legitimately upset and told me that if I really didn't want to give Vanessa a chance to live with me and prove that she wasn't as bad as I believed she was, then I should have just called her, and she would have put an end to it. But she couldn't forgive me for calling the police and having them evicted so nastily like how I did, and told me that she would never speak to me again because to her, what I did first was pretty much unforgivable. It broke my heart because of how sad she sounded, and it didn't feel like she was enjoying this at all. Usually my mother's all for the drama, but this time it was different, as if she was actually disappointed in me, and I couldn't take that. I apologized to her in spite of myself, knowing that I had no fault in any of this, but she still disconnected the call and blocked me. I feel terrible about what happened, but I really can't think of another way that I could have solved this and had Carson and Vanessa leave my house and me alone without getting the police involved. It was the last resort, and I don't understand why my mother's taking this so hard. I know about my mother's past, and I know that it couldn't have been easy for her, but I feel like she's not looking at things from my perspective either and being a little too selfish. I didn't intend to hurt her or bring up her past trauma. It just happened. And if she wants to blame someone, then shouldn't it be her husband and stepdaughter who went out of the way to mess with me and stir up trouble for themselves? I just feel horrible. I can't share what happened with my mother here because I don't think it's my place to speak about it, but I still need to know if I should apologize to her or not. I'd have for calling the cops on my stepdad and stepsister in spite of my mom's bad experience with cops. Update 1. Okay, I didn't want to talk about this because, like I said, I didn't think it was my place to discuss it without my mother's prior consent, but I think it's okay because this is obviously going to be anonymous and nobody will be able to figure out who she is just from one Reddit post. Besides, I think it's important to mention exactly why she was so traumatized by cops, because otherwise you guys won't have enough context to come to a conclusion regarding this. Like I'd said, my mother broke up with my father almost 15 years ago. Her first boyfriend after breaking up was a cop, and I guess you guys already know where this is going. He was literally one of the most toxic people that I, or literally anyone, could ever come across, and it was a miracle that he managed to string my mother along for more than 2 years. He used to put her down all the time and would make sure that he absolutely shattered her self-esteem. He'd also isolated her from pretty much everybody in her life, and she would meet me about once or twice a month while she was with him, and even then she seemed very out of it, as if she wasn't even there with me. After almost a year, she was forced to stop seeing anybody at all because her boyfriend didn't like the fact that she still had ties to her past life and wanted her to give up all of that if she really wanted to be with him. He was jealous, petty, and insecure, and I don't think I would wish a boyfriend like that even on my worst enemy. The relationship ended only because he ran away with one of his coworkers in the middle of the night and left my mother nothing but a letter saying that he didn't want to be with her anymore and had been having an affair for almost 8 months before he finally made a run for it. My mother was depressed for almost a year after that, and I don't know what happened, but she seemed to have developed a fear of cops and couldn't bring herself to trust them after that. It was crazy because one time she even lost her purse and refused to report it to the cops either. That's how deep-rooted her fear and mistrust was. And I guess you guys can imagine how betrayed and hurt she'd felt when she realized that I'd reported her husband and her stepdaughter to the police. That was the one thing that she could never forgive, and her family had pushed me to do exactly that one thing, knowing how badly it would upset my mother. I'm beginning to think that they'd actually planned this so they could turn my mother against me once and for all, but I have no way to prove it, so I guess it's just my word against theirs. All I remember is that even though Carson seemed a little shocked to see the cops, Vanessa didn't seem flustered at all. But it's not like I could do anything about that now. All I can do is wish and hope that my mother comes around. Even if she doesn't, I'll be okay with that because I know that I try my best to keep the peace, but her new family just wouldn't let it happen, and now it's her choice who she wants to stick with. Update 2. So my mother and I haven't spoken in almost 2 weeks after the whole incident. I bet Vanessa's pretty happy about all of this if I'm to go by her social media. I don't follow her, but a friend of mine sent me a picture that she put up a couple of days ago of my mother, Carson, and her on a beach chilling with sunglasses on with the caption, "Just a fam recovering." I don't understand what she's supposed to be recovering from because as far as I'm concerned, I was the one who went through a traumatic experience with her and her father. I talked to my dad about it, and he thinks that I did the right thing. What else was I even supposed to do in a situation like that? My dad even told me that a couple of weeks ago, before my housewarming party, she'd even approached him and asked him if he had any places in mind where Vanessa could live that were cheap and close to her workplace. My dad's a real estate agent, and he mainly deals with houses that are being sold and not ones being put up for rent. So he told my mother that he couldn't help her out unless she was looking for a place that she wanted to buy for her stepdaughter, and she told him that she would if it were up to her, but Carson didn't want to drop that kind of money on a house for a temporary job, and that made sense too. The thing that I was just upset about was that these were pretty bold words from a woman who refused to help me with my college tuition because she wanted me to learn to be independent and self-sufficient. But when it comes to Vanessa, there are a lot more allowances being made in comparison to how I was brought up and treated by my mother. Again, it's not even her own blood, but she seems to have a better relationship with Vanessa than she does with me. Even with this beach trip, my mother had always insisted that she didn't like the beaches and actually preferred traveling in the hills or maybe through the woods if we had to go on vacations or trips. I love the beaches, but with her I always had to compromise and settle for her choices because otherwise I knew that she just wouldn't go and we'd end up canceling the trip altogether. So it just stings to see that she's ready to make adjustments for Vanessa, but she was never ready to do that for me. I didn't think that this post would bother me as much as it is, but I really took that one hard. It almost feels as if Vanessa has the mother and the family that I never did because my mother was never willing to be that mom for me, and that hurts. I guess I'm going to talk to her when she returns because I just can't stand this weird silence, even if it is to tell her that she's really disappointed in me and that now I don't want to speak to her again. I feel like we need to talk at least for one last time. Update 3. I told one of my friends to tell me whenever they think Vanessa is back from her vacation, and I learned that they came back yesterday. I don't know how I'm going to bring this up with my mother, but I know that I have to get through it somehow. She has blocked me on her social media, so I can't use that to get to her, but she hasn't blocked my number, and I guess I'm going to have to call her. It's going to be hard because we haven't spoken in almost 2 weeks, and we aren't really on the best terms right now. My dad thinks that I should give it a day or two before I contact her, but I think she'll answer if I call her right now. She's probably in a good mood from the vacation, so that might lead her to accept my call or something. To be honest, I just want to do this because I feel brave right now, and I want to rip off the Band-Aid as soon as I can while I still have the courage to do it. It's just been 1 day since I learned that my mother's back in town, but I almost feel like throwing up because what if she doesn't answer my call, and this is it? I haven't done it yet because I feel like if she doesn't answer my call then that'll be pretty earth-shattering for me. I've never had that great of a relationship with my mother, but it was a relationship still, so if I lose that, then I don't know what I'm going to do. Update 4. Okay, so I called my mother finally, and I just got off that phone call after talking to her for almost half an hour. She told me that she wanted to meet me in person after I was done, saying whatever I had to say. It was mostly me who did the talking while she just listened to me quietly. It was pretty nerve-wracking to tell her exactly what I thought of her as a mother and just basically talk about everything that I'd mentioned in the previous updates, because that's how I really feel, and I think it was more important for her to hear that than for you guys. She didn't say much in response, but told me that she understood where I was coming from and wished that she had been a better mother the first time around. I didn't understand what that was supposed to mean, and I didn't ask either because I want to save something for our meeting tomorrow. We're getting together for lunch, and I think it's going to be tense and awkward. Even if she isn't awkward, I'm sure that I will be, because even the thought of seeing her in person makes me very nervous. I keep thinking that I'm going to mess something up, and I don't know, maybe something bad will happen. Ever since she got married, I just keep feeling that something is bound to go wrong every time we speak, and so far I've been right about that. I just hope that I'm not right about it tomorrow. Update 5. Hi. So I'm on my way back home from lunch. I can't go back to work because I really don't feel up to it anymore. I just feel like going to bed after drinking some wine and not doing anything for the rest of the day. My talk with my mother didn't go the way I'd planned or thought it would. It didn't go badly. We did sort out our problems, but the result was the same. This feels like a breakup, but much worse because it's not some stupid little boyfriend who's dumping me for a younger, hotter girlfriend, but my mother dumped me for her stepdaughter whom I hate. I don't even know how to begin, but I feel like you guys have been here with me for most of the journey, so you deserve to know what happened. When we met, we hugged and everything, and it was nice and normal for a little while, but then we started talking about everything, and all the ugly feelings of jealousy inside of me came bubbling up to the surface. And I told her how I wished that she'd been the mother to me that she was now being to Vanessa, which didn't even make sense to me, because she was an adult, but I was just a teenager when I needed my mom to be there for me. I told her that I felt like I deserved to be treated better by her in the past, and that it was really disappointing to see her turn into a completely different person for her new family, because I keep finding it very difficult to come to terms with her, since she should have been that person for our family. And yes, I'm in my 30s now, but it still feels like the younger me deserved a much better mother than her. The same person, but a different version of it. I could see her eyes filling up with tears while I was saying these things, and it was obviously very hurtful for her to hear it, but I couldn't stop and just went on and on. I didn't really know if I would ever get a chance like this to just talk my heart out, so I needed to make the most of this opportunity. I made it very clear to her that while I did love her, I really did think that she could have been a much better mom to me, because she owed me that. Once I was done talking, my mother told me that she truly was sorry that she never put in the same effort for me that she was now doing for Vanessa. She explained that back then she just wanted to live her own life. My parents got married when they were really young because of pressure from their families, and even had me at a relatively young age. My mother wasn't even ready to be a mom when she had me, but my grandparents forced her to take up such a huge responsibility of raising a child, even when she wasn't ready for it. When she got divorced, she finally felt like she had some sense of control over her life and became a little irresponsible. By the time her divorce was finalized, I wasn't even very little, and she felt like she could leave me on my own because she believed that I'd be able to handle it. But the truth was that she'd mentally detached herself from the family long before the divorce proceedings had even started. It was sad, but she just didn't feel like she wanted to be a mother and started putting herself first. It was selfish and immature of her, but she just spent so much of her life doing things that everybody else expected and wanted her to do. She just didn't want to deal with that pressure anymore and wanted to do things her own way. She wanted freedom for a while, and unfortunately that came at the cost of our relationship. But now she finally felt like she was ready to have a family and take care of her people. So she was the mother that she never was for me. Only this time she was being a mother to Vanessa and a wife to Carson. She admitted that I was right and that she should have been a better mother and wife when she was part of our family. But she got too selfish and it just didn't work. I thought that now that we had cleared the air, we could go back to normal and we could at least try and build a better relationship. Instead, she told me that she believed it would be best for us to not talk to each other for a while and stay away, because obviously both of us were going through a lot in our personal lives, and she didn't want that stress right now. She thought that if we took time away from each other, then we would be able to come back stronger or something equally asinine. But I knew that the real reason she didn't want to talk to me anymore was because of Carson and Vanessa. They didn't like her being close to me, and I think by now it's pretty clear where her priorities are. So I wasn't surprised, but I was pretty let down because my mother finally had the chance to correct her past and be a little less selfish than time. But she still chose to remain the same way and let me down yet again. It's pathetic, but I really do feel bad because today I honestly felt like we were connecting on a human level. Evidently, I was wrong, and her owning up to her mistakes ultimately meant nothing because she was still going to give me the cold shoulder and act like I wasn't even her daughter so that her new family wouldn't get too annoyed. It's fine, though, because now I know that my mother was never really going to be there for me. It's a little sad, but there's not much that I could do anymore. And honestly, she's let me down so many times already that now I don't even feel surprised. I just want to get on with my life now. Now on to the next story. Story 8. A bachelorette party in Italy goes horribly wrong after ignoring safety concerns and gets warning about creepy men. I 24F have a friend 32F who got engaged and decided to do a girls' trip as her bachelorette party. She picked Italy, and there were 6 of us on this trip. My friend loves to drink and party, whereas I don't drink but will indulge on occasion, like special events and celebrations. During this trip, I try to participate in the drinking as best as I could. I'm a very bubbly and extroverted person when I'm in a group setting, so who I am sober versus drunk, it's the same energy. I have tried to express this to my friend for years, but she is still someone who gets sad when other people don't drink as much as her. It is also physically impossible for me to drink as much as her. I just can't, but I tried really hard for my friend on this trip to indulge her. I wanted her to feel happy. I share this to express that I went in with the best intentions. But here is where I drew the line. We met some young people. They invited us to a party. We went and danced and met more people. The night kept going on longer, and we were very far from our lodgings. These young men, with 2 women in their group, told us to stay with them for the night. I wasn't feeling the situation. It felt unsafe, but the group voted and I was in the minority. They were all quite inebriated, and it was hard to be the only sober person trying to get them to reconsider and get a cab and go to our lodgings. I didn't trust these men. Something seemed wrong, but I was at a loss as I could not split from my group and didn't feel safe separating from them in the middle of the night. We go to this house and settle in. In the middle of the night, I hear attempts being made to enter our room. The men entered even though we had locked the doors. I pretended to be asleep, and the men were talking in Italian, but it felt like they were checking on us and wanting to do something. They were quarreling with each other, going back and forth. It seemed they ultimately left to argue outside. I didn't sleep the whole night. I texted my boyfriend and told him what was happening and how I felt unsafe. Next morning, the group of girls I'm with decides we are going to stay another day because these men have offered to show us around. I didn't want to get into a car with them because I found them creepy. There were women in their group, but it didn't matter. They seemed even more suspicious to me being overly friendly. The whole morning, I found the men staring at me a lot and also making some comments about my ethnicity. I am Korean, and they could tell, and it seemed that they were interested in me because of my ethnicity, asking me strange questions, including if I'm a virgin or not. So, in my head, I could only think of perverted reasons for these questions because I thought these guys were sketchy and sizing us all up for some reason I couldn't figure out yet. My friend said I was having a language barrier issue, and I probably misunderstood. They were liking the attention of these affluent-seeming guys who were going to get us on a yacht. My suspicions and concerns went unheard. I talked to my boyfriend in France, and he said he could come get me, and he did, for leaving the trip because I felt uncomfortable and unsafe. I tried to communicate all this to my friend, but she didn't feel the same, so I did what I had to do for myself. The men were saying they will drive us to get our things from the hotel, and we can stay with them instead, and the girls were considering it. I left 4 days prematurely. The girls eventually came back and told me how creepy and scary the men became, and that I was right. The friend, however, 32F, whose bachelor RIT, was mad at me for leaving. Edit. Just want to add that my boyfriend offered to drive them to our booked hotel, and I urged them to follow the planned itinerary. We even found a legit company who did yacht services, and my boyfriend offered to gift my friend by paying, but she and the others wanted to go with that group of men. There is no consensus bot for ADA, but based on the top comments, OOP was NTA. Comments where OP has replied. Commenter, While bitty NTA is your safety and well-being is key, you repeatedly try to get them not to go, they ignored you. But UDA, if you're an AI, or this story is the plot of a bad horror movie. OP, no, just want to clarify that fortune, nothing happened to my friends. They are all safe, and I kept up communication with them, including making them give me all their location, so I could track them on my iPhone with Find My. I didn't sleep right until they left the creepy dudes, but I'm glad nothing happened. It could have been much worse, and I'm so glad it was not. Commenter, NTA, do whatever you need to feel safe. Your friend is very selfish. She sounds like it just me. Everything is about her and what makes her happy. OP, I understand it was her bachelorette trip, so to some extent it is supposed to be all about her. But you're right, she can be a little self-centered, which is what I was trying to explain with the drinking, that the same mindset applies to everything, and I feel that's why she is mad at me, because she cannot see my discomfort or limitations might vary from her own. I feel bad for leaving, but I'm not sure how I could have stayed. It was difficult to weigh the responsibility of remaining a part of this trip and experience versus feeling safe. Update February 7th, 2024. At 24F, did not expect such an overwhelming response on that post. I wrote it in part to vent because I felt some members of the bridal party are unfairly upset with me. I am no longer part of the group chat, and I was supposed to be singing a song for the couple at this wedding, which I'm sure won't be happening either. That's okay. At this point, I do not want to attend. Seems like a sign that I should no longer be friends with the bride 32F and another friend from this group, and maybe even the rest of them. It still hurts, though. I guess that's normal. I also want to express that this can happen anywhere in the world. I do not mean to claim Italy is unsafe. Rather, that situations can be unsafe anywhere, especially when people get caught up and choose to stop being aware of their surroundings. When I was living in a model house, I witnessed a lot of manipulation, and part of my vigilance is due to the experience. I had to have it fall on deaf ears. Was extremely disheartening, but I learned from this experience now too. In my post, I also received several comments requesting more information, so I will answer it here as part of the update. If I missed your question, I'm really sorry. 1. Did I tell the girls the men had entered our room at night? Yes, I tried to wake up the girl next to me to alert her after the two men went outside to argue. She was still too inebriated. All the girls were wasted, and although I felt sober and lucid, I also had some alcohol, so I texted the group chat and said we need to urgently talk when everyone is up. I didn't sleep all night. I stayed in this hyper-alert state. When the girls woke, I explained what happened in the night along with my concerns. A few girls seemed to consider this, but the bride-to-be and another girl began to persuade everyone I was simply overreacting. They asserted that because nothing happened, it was my personal paranoia at best. They tried to explain away the incident of the men entering the room to be that perhaps one of them was unhappy to give the room to us. They said everyone was drunk and tired, and as such people become cranky. This conversation got cut short when a woman from the Italian group entered the room. We had no alone time after this, so I continued to persist in the group chat. The only thing I kept from the girls in my group was that my boyfriend was currently on his way. It's a few hours' drive. I chose to keep this a secret because I did not want the girls to mention it to the Italian group. I felt it would cause a problem in the worst-case scenario. 2. Is the bride to be a cheater? I don't feel comfortable writing about her in detail, but she did not have sex with the men to my knowledge, and I don't think it was her intention at all. But I do feel that she and a few other girls did want to take advantage of this trip to have some kind of spontaneous adventure. They wanted a story to tell and to have some kind of wild experience which 100% involved flirting with men for the thrill of it. This mentality quickly made following the planned itinerary boring. In this new situation that presented itself more exciting. All the other girls in the group are single except myself, one other girl and the bride. So I think that contributed. The bride-to-be and her best friend who kept disagreeing with me alongside her love to party. Her fiancé is the same. They're constantly partying together, going to raves and concerts and festivals all over the world. It was also for this reason they kept trying to overrule me. They deemed themselves more experienced travelers. Even before this trip, I've always been labeled the baby of the group. Despite this label, I am not clueless. It also takes more to impress me, so I don't give a reaction easily or get swept up by charitable gestures. These gestures really made the girls become careless. I am spirited and friendly to people I know, but naturally skeptical of strangers. I don't have a loud voice, but I am vocal and will speak my mind, whereas some of the other girls are more quiet followers who say things that they know will be in alignment with the group. The bride and her best friend were louder and very wrong, but their loudness and the conviction with which they projected their opinion bulldozed me, especially when no one else would take my side. There was a major that only happens in movies, this would never happen to us type mentality going on that didn't work in my favor. This mixed with the high of alcohol, drugs, and the runaway train that was the mentality of the girls on this trip. It got really hard to talk sense into any of them. My boyfriend met me at a store when I left with a girl from the Italian group on a supply run. It felt like a red flag to me that they always wanted to accompany us. My boyfriend arrived, and I told the Italian woman, I am going home. My boyfriend had me call the bride-to-be. He said he will take them all back to the hotel. He even offered to help arrange a boat, if that's what was keeping her here. She told him he is controlling, and she feels bad for me. She refused everything he graciously offered and asked for me to be put on the phone. Then she yelled at for having done this behind her back and for spoiling the mood of the trip. SL the memory for her. The conversation was going nowhere. She told me to essentially off. I was fed up at this point and feeling unwell from lack of sleep. My boyfriend went back on the phone with the bride and made her put him on speaker and then told them all to share their location with my phone. The bride refused, but everyone else did it. The girls went later with the women from the Italian group back to the hotel to get their things and relocate to the villa. 3. After the trip, most of the girls informed me I was right, excluding bride-to-be and one other girl. This is what happened. The men started to get more sexual on the boat in the evening, but not before trying to get everyone extremely intoxicated. It wasn't a kidnapping scheme. I think it seems they just wanted to get sex in return for all the free favors they had provided and became more aggressive and demanding about it. No one was sexually assaulted to my knowledge, but it seems like the men were quite persistent, so the line is blurry. Also, I learned one of the girls did have sex with one of the guys, the bride-to-be's best friend, who was the girl that kept siding with her. She had sex with one of the men the first night, and that's probably why she was so adamant to stay. They continued their fling, but the other girls became sour to the experience and asked to leave by the end of the night. They had to check back into a different hotel. What a mess. The bride-to-be is angry that I abandoned the group and that I left too suddenly without thinking about it. She says I have shown I am not a person who sticks with her through thick and thin. In my defense, I tried my best to express my feelings, but they went unheard, so the only choice I had was to leave because, in all honesty, I refused to risk my own safety. I also did not want to get into too much detail for sake of length, but the men made me uncomfortable for several reasons, and I think I have the right to not be subjected to unwanted attention despite all my calm attempts to reason. The bride-to-be doesn't understand my side. She believes I overreacted for nothing. I'm not sure if the other girls are trying to persuade her to understand me, or if they're all in agreement with her. I think I'm just done defending myself. I refuse to beg for this friendship. I kind of want to just move on quietly. What transpired speaks volumes by itself. Know for background, I have known the bride-to-be for years, and the time span is the main reason we stay friends. We don't see each other all the time, though, and can go months and months without interaction. I have many other friend groups, but the history we share keeps us together over the years. She doesn't seem to have grown at all, so maybe it's time to go separate ways. Comments where Op has replied. Commenter, NTA chills that could have gone so differently. Did they not see the last season of White Lotus? Thank goodness you got yourself out of there and agree that boyfriend is a rock star and gets full marks. Ditch these vermin pretending to be your friends. Opie, ironically, I've also not watched any of White Lotus, but I see it mentioned here on my post a few times. I think I need to watch it myself. I only chose to come on the trip with these girls after reviewing the itinerary, because I knew what kind of travelers they are. I guess getting engaged to be married didn't change anything. In hindsight, I may be a little naive for thinking it would. Thank you so much for reading my post. I hope it helps someone like me in the future or makes girls aware that you can never be too cautious. I'm grateful and extremely lucky by happenstance that my boyfriend was around, as he was also going to attend this wedding. It's much more difficult when you have a long flight to take to get to your person. Additional info from Opie. I was just saying to another user in a comment that looking back on it, I think it was naive of me to expect this group to not do something like this given their past travel history. I made an assumption based on the itinerary and the fact that she was getting married that this trip would be a different vibe. It wasn't, and I'm just lucky my BF was also going to be attending this wedding, so he was nearby to come get me. And you were so right, it should have never been about voting on whether my feelings, discomfort, and concerns mattered. They should have been taken into consideration. There's a lot of evidence to, at the very least, paint the picture that these men were making aggressive, unwanted advances which could escalate, and that we shouldn't entertain their type of company. The fiancé is also my friend, and he did ask for my side of the events after she told him hers. He did not see anything wrong with my decision and felt it was a bad idea what they decided to do. But he is somewhat like her, and that he's very much a carefree partier. Also, the girls and the bride all shared their side of the story first, so I think it influenced the narrative a lot. He has told me he has spoken to the bride about what happened. Then she reached out and asked me to attend the wedding, but there was no apology. She didn't address anything or discuss it. Felt very much like she was deciding to let me back in, and so I decided her re-inviting me to her wedding wasn't enough. I told her I am not coming. I was supposed to sing at her wedding, but I'm no professional. It was more of a little gesture for the bride and groom as my friends, not something that would be missed if it didn't happen. I don't think my absence will be felt much in the sense of the program, so I don't feel bad about not going to the wedding. I don't think my conscience would allow me to even sing for her without feeling like a clown after everything that went down. She's been indirectly posting passive-aggressively meme, quote reals, and stuff about friendships and loyalty that I know is a dig at me on her stories. The friendship is over, and the way she's acting only makes it easier to be okay with that. She always has to prove she's right or explain her way out of something when she's wrong. She'll never acknowledge anything other than her perspective. I somehow got through all these years of our friendship never having ruffled her feathers. But this one time we weren't on the same page for valid reasons. It really showed me how ignorant and self-centered she is. I'm sorry for the novel. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Caught my girlfriend secretly dating her stepbrother behind my back all these years, so I exposed their affair in front of everyone at our college graduation banquet. My girlfriend and I both met during our junior year of college. We went to a small school, and it was hard not to notice everyone on campus. I'd seen her around from time to time, and I thought she was attractive. However, I never had a reason to go talk to her. We both ended up in the same writing class during the first semester of our junior year. As soon as I saw her, I sat down next to her and struck up a conversation. We ended up hitting it off, and we workshopped a lot of things together for the class. A few weeks into the semester, I made a move on her, and she seemed glad that I did. The first summer that we were apart was difficult because we weren't used to long distance. We lived about 4 hours away from each other, so we weren't able to see each other very often. We talked every day, and we ended up making a couple of trips to each other to hang out over the summer. When the fall semester of our senior year started, we were very happy to finally be back together. Everything was great between us. When we started, I didn't notice anything strange going on between us, so I was maybe a little oblivious to some things. In hindsight, I can see how she wanted to hang out with me less and was using her course load as an excuse. I had seen her schedule at the beginning of the semester, and she had a relatively light course load. She had a job, but she only worked part-time. There was definitely time for her to go on more dates with me or spend more time with me. She just didn't want to. Whenever we were together, she would be on her phone a lot, and she was often pretty secretive about what she was doing on it. Things continued like that all the way until the spring semester. I had brought up a couple of times how I was feeling, but she assured me both times that she wanted to be with me and that she was just busy or stressed. One night, I texted her and asked her if I could come over to her room and spend the night with her. It was a Friday night, and I knew that she didn't work in the morning, and I just wanted to be with my girlfriend. She replied a few minutes later and told me that she had a migraine from looking at a computer for too long and was about to go to sleep. I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw a notification that my girlfriend was online. She told me she was going to sleep because she was looking at a screen all day and had a headache. I figured that she was lying to me about that and just didn't want to be with me because she was scrolling on Instagram. It was painful to have that realization, but I think it was something that I kind of needed. I was a little upset about it, So my roommate asked me about what was going on. I explained everything to him, and he told me that it sounded like she was over the relationship already. Then he casually mentioned that she was probably already talking to someone else. I didn't see the correlation right away, but he encouraged me to look into it. I didn't really think much about it right away, but after a few days of stewing on what he said, I decided that maybe it would be worth looking into. She really didn't want to spend a lot of time with me, and she was on her phone quite a bit, being secretive about it. It made sense that she could have been hiding something from me. I looked online for some clues about how to tell if someone's cheating, and I evaluated my relationship against those. I took a mental note of what her snap score was if she was online after she told me she was going to sleep, and how often she was turning me down when I asked if we could go on dates or be together. From everything I found, signs were pointing to her possibly being with someone else. One weekend, we made plans to go to a concert together. I bought the tickets and everything. She backed out at the last minute and told me that she had to work. She never worked on Saturdays, so right away it seemed like a lie to me. I told her that I was okay with it and that I would bring my roommate along to the concert with me instead. I told him what happened, and he got it in my head that she was canceling to be with another guy. He convinced me of that, and I was pretty frustrated and anxious about everything. I checked her snap score while we were on our way to the concert and saw that it had been increasing while she was supposed to be at work. I could also tell through the maps on Snapchat that she was at a restaurant in the city, not at her job near our college campus. My roommate decided that instead of going to the concert, we were going to go see what was going on in that restaurant. When we got there, she was clearly on a date with a guy. They were sitting next to each other, and he had his arms around her while they were laughing and getting very cozy. We even saw them kiss a few times. I was heartbroken to see that everything my roommate had been saying was true. She had been cheating on me and lying to me throughout the year. I didn't know how long it had been going on, but she had been behaving a certain way for a while. While we were waiting, my roommate started looking through her social media profiles to try to figure out who the guy was. He put the pieces together relatively quickly and found out that the guy she was on the date with was her stepbrother. I knew that her parents were divorced, and her mother had married pretty hastily during the spring semester of our junior year. However, I had never met her family. We hadn't been dating for that long, and her family never visited for family weekend or anything like that on campus. I was shocked that she was cheating on me with her stepbrother of all people. I told my roommate that I was going to confront her the following day and end everything with us. He was the one who convinced me to go about it a different way. He helped me plan how I was going to get revenge on them both. Her family didn't come to visit for small things, but I knew that they were coming in for our graduation ceremony. I pretended like everything was normal with us up until then. Every year, the day before our graduation ceremony, our university held a large banquet for the students and their family members. My girlfriend and I had planned on attending that together with our family, so we could all meet each other. Everything was going very well at first. Everybody was getting along, and I was honestly drinking a little too much wine. The president of the university was scheduled to give a speech at the dinner, so there was a live microphone on the stage in the room. I was feeling a little confident, so I made my way over to the microphone. The faculty around me were a little surprised, but they didn't stop me right away. They probably should have. I started off by congratulating all of my fellow classmates on making it through the year to get to graduation. I turned my attention to my girlfriend, and many people in the room turned and looked at her while I was speaking. At first, it seemed like I was just talking about how lovely she was. Then I mentioned how I was surprised to see her on a date with her stepbrother. The room went silent when I brought that up. Everybody was taking in the gravity of what I'd said. They were both shaking their heads and denying it. I explained that I saw them kissing each other and how she was cheating on me with him throughout the entire year. People were pulling out their phones to record what I was saying, but I was ushered away from the microphone by one of the faculty members before I could get into a lot of the details. However, her mother and stepfather were asking her a lot of questions, and she was trying to answer them. My parents pulled me out of the room and asked me about why I would embarrass her that way. I was just laughing, and I ended up leaving. My girlfriend texted me later that night and told me about how much I humiliated her in front of the entire class. I didn't really care. She had been lying to me and treating me like I was garbage for an entire year, and I finally found out why. I thought she deserved to be a little bit embarrassed about everything. Our graduation ceremony was the following day, and people were still talking about the dinner. I could see that my girlfriend was embarrassed and could feel people talking about her behind her back throughout the entire ceremony. I really think I ruined that for her. That was a few years ago, but I am now over what happened. I realized that not everybody is going to be the way that she was. However, I am now very aware of signs of cheating, and I keep an eye out for that in my relationships. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Am I wrong for not allowing my in-laws to see my daughter after they gave her medication? I know how the title sounds, but please bear with me, throw away for obvious reasons. I, 24 am, and my wife, 24, recently had our daughter in July. She is the best thing to ever happen to my wife and I, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have our little bundle of joy. She recently got sick while staying with her grandparents, my in-laws, while my wife and I took a trip for work. For context, my in-laws are really big into LifeWave X39. It's some patch that supposedly helps regrow stem cells by reflecting light rays back into your body, allowing your body to produce more stem cells to fight off diseases and sickness. If you ask me, it sounds like a snake oil, and my wife agrees, calling it a pyramid scheme. The only way to get said patches is by spending well over $1,000, and then you're tasked with selling the patches yourself. It's essentially some multi-level marketing product where the more patches you sell, the more money you make, falling right in line with my wife's comparison to a pyramid scheme, but MLMs are somehow legal now. I've tried doing research on X39, and the only comments I've seen praise said product are brand new accounts never used before or after, or their entire profile is dedicated to shilling out for LifeWave X39. In my own research, they appear to just be overpriced stickers. They contain no medication, no special UV rays, or anything of the sort. They're literally just an overpriced sticker with an air bubble. But my wife and I have made it very clear that we wanted no part in X39, nor did we want our daughter to have it, even if it's fake. We wanted no part in it, and on the off chance it did something, I didn't want our daughter to be used as their lab rat or guinea pig. Now, before we left our daughter with my in-laws, we provided them with some infant medication just in case she got sick. Can never be too safe, you know. Well, we returned home from Ray work trip early because our daughter wasn't getting any better, so we picked her up and went home. We were going to give her a bath, and in the process of taking her jacket off, we found an X39 patch on her arm. Upon finding it, we immediately called her parents and demanded to know why she had a patch on her. Her parents tried saying that it's safe for baby. We even ordered the ones for ages 7 and younger, and that it's practically medication, their words, which still didn't answer our question. So my wife checked the go bag, and the Motrin we gave them was, while it was used, not used very much at all. Her parents tried claiming that someone else in their group or whatever gave it to their son, and they got better in a weak point, is we didn't buy it, nor did we care. We've made it abundantly clear that we wanted nothing to do with X39, and we didn't want our daughter to be a part of it. They failed to listen. My wife was on the phone with him for over an hour, and while I don't know the exact length of conversation, went till I know it, at least ended with her screaming, going to see my daughter again. And if you attempt to come to my house, we will call the police, before hanging up. That was 3 days ago now, and we've had several missed calls from family members, her parents, her siblings, and even family friends, all saying that we overreacted and they were just trying to help. Maybe we overreacted, but we wanted nothing to do with that, and despite making it clear, they went against our wishes and did it anyways, and instead of giving my daughter actual medication, they tried to give her some placebo patch. Her parents tried claiming that we stopping them from seeing their only grandchild over something so small, but we didn't want to hear it. Ida AA has no consensus bot, but based on top comments, OOP was NTA. Comments where OP has replied. Comment: I kind of thank you for leaving your sick baby to go out of town. Opie: we didn't leave a sick baby to go out of town. We left her with her grandparents while she was fine. We only packed Motrin because, as I stated in my post, you can never be too careful. She got sick while we were out of town, not before. Comment: you say that like it's snake oil, like it's just as bad as the X39. Was it Advil and cough syrup? Or just a generic bottle that you wrote infant medication on? You expect us to believe that you gave the medication just in case she got sick, and then she immediately got sick. Come on, this sounds like total BS. Grandparents don't exactly have children medication laying around. We packed our Motrin, which I quite literally stated later in the post, had you read it, not some generic bottle or snake oil. And just as bad, nor do they have the ability to really go anywhere. They live a good 30 to 40 minutes outside of any nearby town. The drive to and from her parents is a grand whole hour drive from where we live and my wife, and I quite literally work with sick people all the time. No, I'm not a doctor, nor do we have medical expertise, so my wife and I contracting something is usually pretty high, so we pack Motrin or whatever the store brand is that we'll buy every time we left her with her grandparents for more than a day. Update February 8th, 2024. About a month ago, I made this post ranting about my in-laws' weird obsession with a, for lack of a better term, cult regarding stem cell regeneration through patches, which clearly isn't a real thing. There's been some development on that end, and while I'm confident things will likely end here, I wanted to give a quick update for those who may have been curious. I'm writing this on the toilet at work, so don't mind the rush of it all. After my wife essentially cut tied with them, and we all received a million phone calls and text messages from family and friends, things quieted down for about a week or two. We started having my sister watch our daughter instead when we had to work. We haven't had another out-of-trip town since the initial post. However, through those couple of weeks, we never really heard anything beyond a couple of supposed talking posts on Facebook bitching about us. But I can't seem to find the posts. We thought things were probably hopefully going to end there, but boy were we wrong, and this is quite the jump from the last post. My wife and I were visited by CPS about 2 weeks ago, or so, after they received concerning calls about supposed child abuse and negligence within the household. Of course, nothing like that happened, and the caseworker was very quick to see that we had asked who reported her, and while she couldn't say, we had a suspicion it was from her parents. We were completely helpful and cooperative with the caseworker, and after she left that night, my wife called her mom up and asked her if she's the one who called CPS. Surprisingly, her mother took full accountability, but not so surprisingly tried to spin it around her favor, claiming that she did it for our own good, because our daughter was sick and she wasn't getting any better when she was there, so clearly we were doing something awful as parents. Kids get sick, it happens, but they're also extreme anti-vaxxers, not just everything from even as something as trivial as the flu shot, yet they're willing to shill out thousands of dollars for some supposed stem cell regeneration sticker. The hypocrisy and irony in there is unmatched. My wife didn't really know how to react to that, so she basically told her mom to go herself, and she wants nothing to do with her again. I know I saw a few comments on the last post saying we shouldn't have cut them out entirely, but now I'm starting to question why we didn't cut them out years ago before our daughter was even a thought in our heads. About a week after the first audit, my mother-in-law showed up to our house on my day off while my wife was at work and essentially demanded to see our daughter, forcing her way into our home, pushing past my arm when I told her to get the hell out of my house. She had no business matching in here like that. She essentially told me that I'm unfit to be a parent because I'm depriving my daughter of help she desperately needed because she's clearly a very sick child. My daughter is perfectly healthy right now and in fact has had no stiffy nose and no high temperature, nothing. I told my mill straight up that she was batshit insane. I went off on her about how she lied to us, against our wishes, had the audacity to call and lie to CPS, and then show up at our house unannounced, SL uninvited, and march herself inside, as well as everything about her X39 life wave. We argued there for a while before I finally got so fed up, I told her to leave my house before I called the police. She stormed out of the house and in true Karen fashion said this isn't over before slamming my door. I immediately called my wife, who was of course late. The following morning, we filed a restraining order at the courthouse from her mom and dad because they're clearly not in their right mindset. The caseworker had to audit us a few more times as per their guidelines over the past 2 weeks, and yesterday was her last day, where she informed us that we're doing good and she's sorry for the trouble they caused. We kept her up to speed on the life wave, the showing up unannounced, and the restraining order, and that she couldn't really take a side. She seemed apologetic, but my wife and I are pretty livid. We started looking at houses in another state to get as far as safe from her in-laws as possible. Our company has offices out there, so it's entirely possible we could just be transferred, so we're crossing our fingers that all goes well. The restraining order gets filed soon enough, and we'll get a place clear across the country, so that this will hopefully be my last update. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Divorced my cheating husband at the age of 53. I finally started taking care of myself, but my adult kids are furious, saying I should have done it when it mattered. Hey everyone, I 53F have been divorced from my ex-husband Larry 54M for 6 years. Larry and I have 2 adult children, Steve 27M and Carla 25F. Larry and I met in college when we were both electrical engineering students. We were both very much on the nerdy side and looked apart, but were very attracted to each other. So I thought anyway. We got married soon after we graduated and both worked as engineers, but after a few years Larry decided he wanted to go to law school to become a patent lawyer. In order to look the lawyer part, Larry underwent a major glow-up during this time on pretty much all levels: tailored clothes, fancy haircuts, designer accessories like watches, etc., along with working out to trade his dad bod for a lean gym bod. During this time, I was having SL, raising our small children, while taking care of about 95% of household matters because of his long working hours, all while working full-time. I admit I did not glow up along with Larry. My own appearance has always been on the plainer side. I'm not overweight, but a bit stocky, 5 feet 5 inches and / 140 pounds, simply cut hair, glasses, practical clothes, and not much makeup. Larry loved me, as is for about the first decade of our relationship. But after he started working as a lawyer, he started to become drawn to more conventionally attractive women and had several affairs. When I pressed for counseling, he said that the issues were things like my big nose and post-baby tummy pooch, not things I could fix with a simple makeover. I was getting organized to ask for a divorce when Carla was hit by a car while riding her bike. She survived and is fine now, but needed several years of intensive surgeries and rehab. In order to provide a unified front for Carla and Steve, Larry and I agreed to stay married and be as cordial as possible. He continued to see other women during this time, but by this time I was past trying to get them to be faithful. We did separate and divorce after Carla went off to college. Larry is remarried now to a much younger woman, 33F. In the past couple years, I have actually decided to focus more on myself, including my appearance now that my children are grown and out of the house, and I don't have to worry about tiptoeing around a difficult husband. I finally have time and resources to do so. I didn't get a nose job or other plastic surgery like Larry had wanted, but I did update and color my hair, started working out more, lost about 15 pounds, got a new wardrobe, and actually started dating. I don't have a steady partner yet, but regularly go to age-appropriate singles events and go on dates. Unfortunately, my children detest the new me. In particular, they blame me for the divorce and are angry that I didn't glow up to accommodate Larry, saying I was too selfish and lazy to do so when it mattered. My son Steve is getting married soon and says he is too angry to invite me to the wedding. Carla has gone low contact with me. I had great relationships with both of them until I started my own glow-up process a couple years ago, which was a few years after Larry and I finalized our divorce. Steve and Carla have told me that the only way to fix this, the only thing that would be fair, is to go back to the way I was before, meaning stop coloring my hairdress in my former PL/frumpy way and stop dating. They say they're most upset about the dating and that it's not fair for me to be looking for a new partner. So AA for everything I have done here for not improving my appearance until after I got divorced. I really don't think Larry would have been faithful to me no matter how much I twisted myself in knots. I felt I did the best I could given the energy and resources I had, and while it may seem selfish, I do believe I deserve to have my own life now, but I am open to other opinions if I have done something wrong here. Additional information from OOP to clarify some things. I appreciate your perspective, but I think there may be some unfair conclusions here. First, where did I ever say I had no sex drive? Our sex life was fantastic for the first decade of our relationship, including after having 2 kids. It only diminished after he decided he had other attraction preferences as he started to rise in the lawyer ranks at his firm. Next, where did I ever say I didn't maintain my appearance? I did in fact maintain the appearance I had since college. I said we were both on the nerdy side. I maintained a healthy weight even after kids and always looked tidy and appropriate for the occasion. In my case, the occasion just happened to be my engineering job and my family/household responsibilities. I just didn't have high-end haircuts and designer clothes, etc. Was I a bit frumpy? Probably, as compared to a big firm lawyer with a $500 haircut and regular spot treatments, but I didn't let myself go by changing my appearance for the worse after marriage. Also, I don't think it's fair to say that I didn't improve myself in any capacity during our marriage. I advanced significantly in my career while keeping a warm and loving home, cooking healthy meals, and otherwise raising our kids. Those were my priorities, especially after Carla's accident. I don't think I got what I had coming just for not wanting painful and time-consuming plastic surgery, especially as one of the big things he wanted me to do was get a nose job when I was already perfectly happy with my nose. If he'd suggested some smaller changes like updating my hairstyle and wardrobe, or even a gym membership, and had broached the idea kindly and had given me time to do these things, I likely would have been more amiable. But as it was, he set the bar so high surgery that it didn't seem like I could reasonably make him happy. Update 1. First, thanks so much for everyone who responded to my initial post. I started out trying to acknowledge everyone's responses, but as they grew to the thousands, I wasn't able to keep up. I'm so sorry. I did read everything and appreciate your time and thoughts, both for those who offered support and those who had more critical feedback. As a small update, while I do agree that the behavior of my adult children, Steve, 27M, and Carla, 25F, has been extremely judgmental and unkind to say the least, I am not ready to write them off. I realized that since they started in with their criticisms a couple years ago, when I started changing my appearance, I've been very defensive and dismissive. Perhaps that is justified. But as I do want to make every effort to maintain a good relationship with my children, I decided that it would be best to listen with an open mind. This doesn't mean I'm going to go back to my old frumpy appearance to accommodate them, of course not, but just that I'm open to hearing what is really bothering them, so we can hopefully talk it out. When I contacted them both to request this, they agreed to have brunch with me this coming weekend, which is a good start. Perhaps the conversation won't change anything, but I'd always regret it if I didn't try, and listening is free. Many of the commenters felt that some info must have been missing from my initial post. I thought I hit all the main points, but can fill in a bit more detail here. For about the first decade of my relationship with my ex-husband Larry, things were really wonderful, or at least I thought. So as I mentioned, we met in college as electrical engineering students who both had fairly plain and unfashionable appearances by conventional. Honestly, as a nerdy woman, I have always been much more attracted to nerdy-looking men than super polished ones. Just a better match for me, I guess. Larry seemed crazy about me from the get-go, and I was equally crazy about him. We graduated, both got good engineering jobs, bought a house, and started our family. We had a very warm and loving home, lots of quality intimacy, and frequently hosted our equally nerdy friends for D&D and anime nights. Then Larry decided he wanted to go to law school. Nothing really changed for the first couple years, but the law school career counselors advised him to brew up his appearance when it was time to start applying for attorney jobs, hence his own glow-up began. Even after that, for his first couple years as a law firm associate, he jokingly referred to his new look as his silly lawyer costume, and looked forward to coming him to change into his anime t-shirts. I didn't try to match his new appearance, because he never asked me to, and initially, it seemed like it was just some sort of uniform for him that he was somewhat uncomfortable with. However, this all changed abruptly one night, when I was supposed to accompany him to an award dinner for his firm. Knowing that it was a fancy thing and that I wasn't the best with fashion, etc., I actually went and got my hair and makeup professionally done and worked with a personal shopper to select what I thought was a flattering dress and shoes appropriate for the occasion. However, when Larry saw me in this getup, he suddenly got angry, made lipstick on a pig-type comments, and threw out the insults about my nose and post-baby tummy pooch. I learned shortly afterwards that he started an affair with a colleague who happened to have a small per nose and flat stomach. Even after he was so mean, I was still hopeful that we could get counseling and work through this, but he didn't want to. I will admit I was paralyzed for a while, and also didn't want to make any rash moves due to the impact on the kids, and perhaps I could have made better decisions there. But by the time I was actually ready emotionally and logistically to proceed with the divorce, Carla had her accident, and I had to shift gears to prioritizing her recovery. On another note, contrary to what some commenters assumed my post, divorce glow-up had nothing to do with wanting to meet new men. Initially, it was precipitated by having a work-rated opportunity to do more high-profile client-facing activities, and I received some gentle guidance from my supervisor that would be a great time to update my appearance, hence the new hairstyle, wardrobe, makeup, manicures, etc. In addition, once I hit 50, my A1C started creeping a bit higher as diabetes runs in my family. Although at 5 feet 5 inches in and 140 pounds, I wasn't medically overweight. My doctor advised that losing just a few pounds coupled with some dietary tweaks and changing on my exercise routine would be a good idea. So I added yoga, Pilates, and strength training to the hiking and cycling I already did, and ended up losing about 15 lbs over the course of a year. I'd always been physically active despite some commenters accusing me of being lazy. I just wasn't focused on sculpting my body to look a certain way as opposed to general fitness. Once I slimmed down and updated my look, I did find myself getting a lot more attention from men. So I figured since I've been single for a few years, I might as well lean into it and start dating. But again, that wasn't the initial reason. Some commenters asked if I'd spent family money on my makeover, and if that might be what was making my children upset. The answer to that is no. Larry and I divided our assets in the divorce. He got the big house we had lived in and paid me for my share, which allowed me to buy a much smaller house and have plenty left. Although as a law firm partner, he makes about 10x what I do. I did not request any alimony beyond my 50% of our assets, which had all been accumulated during the marriage anyway. If folks are interested, I can post an additional update next week once I can talk to my children and find out more about what their issue is. That's the end of today's stories. Thank you for listening. If it made you think, feel, or just escape for a while, smash that like and subscribe so you never miss our future stories. See you next time.